What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and it's time for Preseason 2022, aka patch 11.23. Next year, next year, if it doesn't line up, as 12.23 for 2023. Anyway, let's just move on. So, it is the preseason patch. Unlike the previous year's preseason, I'm not expecting 3 to 4 hours of rundown for this one because it's just not that huge. I think there are some really cool stuff going on here, and that should be a lot of fun to dive into. One last bit of preamble I want to talk about is I decided I wanted to try my hand at writing a preseason update. I'm not going to post it for a while because I don't want there to be any confusion around what I'm covering. But I started writing it a couple days ago. And I think it's interesting. So, stay tuned for that sometime in the middle of the year. I like to announce videos sometimes in my other videos. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, let's get into the 11.23 itself. I think it's actually pretty cool preseason. So we can look at this demo slide real quick. We've got some new items. About half of these are mythics, about half of them are not. There are some item changes to tank items and mage items and lethality items. We got some new runes. So First Strike is new. Glacial Augment's getting reworked. Lethal Tempo's getting reworked. Hextech and Chemtech Drakes now exist. These changes over here are really small to Cloud Drake and Rift Scuttler, and then no champion changes because I think realistically, Riot realized there's not really a reason to do it. It's not that helpful. They can just look at the balance of the champions and then go on from there. So I think that's a very appropriate. And let's get into it itself. Okay, so first things first, we have objective bounties. Now, I don't know what I've seen from people online. I don't really think I've seen a lot of response because I think people have been talking about the other parts of preseason. But I think it's definitely interesting, right? So the idea that, okay, obviously early game can matter, and if you play cleanly, you're just ahead and you snowball the game, right? In the same logic as actual kill shutdowns, like if you just stay ahead and don't int, you just win the game from your lead, right? Play well, win the game, no problem. This is now not only having kill bounties, which have existed for a while, but now we've also got objective bounties, where when a team is overall behind, you're going to see, as you see from the minimap highlights here, towers, Rift Herald, Dragon, things like this. Those are going to have bounties on them, where you're going to get bonus gold for your team for killing them. And so here is the breakdown. Now, worth pointing out that the bounty on Baron and Elder Dragon is really small, all things considered. Now, from what I can understand, and I think this would be absurd if it wasn't true. This 500 gold is split evenly amongst your team. So if you go and steal a Baron and you're behind, you get 100 gold for your Baron steal, and so does everyone else, right? But considering that the value of Baron is around 3,000 gold, if you're going to convert XP into gold at a reasonable margin, instead of being worth 3k, it's 3.5k, right? It's not that huge. And to call out that the XP bounties are calculated based on XP lead, gold lead, dragon count, and turret count, right? So, XP is clearly part of the math, and, well, XP is part of the rewards for Baron. It's actually half the reward of Baron. Half of it's in raw gold, half of it's in XP. Then there's a short time buff, whatever. So this is generally speaking, a pretty low reward. Baron itself is already valuable. Okay, whatever. I mean, Baron itself is already good, so who cares? As far as the fact that you can get a Rift Herald or a Elemental Drake from behind, that's actually pretty meaningful, right? I kind of math out Drakes as being worth about 500 gold. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it's okay and worthwhile. In terms of raw stats, I would say Drakes are worth about 400 to 500 gold to your team, which is about the gold value of an outer turret, for example, right? Now, the differences are that Drakes, of course, do give some XP, and Drakes are 1/4 of a Dragon Soul, which has its own value, right? So if you're going to graph a Drake against win rate, it's going to be worth more than 500 gold. If you're going to graph a Drake as just its individual power, it's going to be about 500 gold. So take that for what you want it to be. Maybe you should really consider a Drake worth 800 to 900 gold because it counts towards dragon stacking, right? There's a argument that then Drake is actually more valuable than Rift Herald because Rift Herald is only ever a tower. I don't want to get into that discussion because that one's going to be really tough. But anyway, the point still stands though, right? That Rift Herald, the first Herald, often just turns into 320 gold by crashing into 2 turret plates. Sometimes it's worth more than that, right? It finishes the entire turret. That's worth another 750 on top for getting, or 650 on top for killing first turret and the turret itself. So, okay, that's now more like 1,000 gold out of getting Rift Herald, right? It's somewhere between those numbers, in which case, okay, yeah, well, 1,000 gold for Rift Herald turns into 1,500 gold for Rift Herald. It's well, I mean, but Baron is the same tier. So I just find it kind of interesting that these are the same number. It doesn't really matter. It's not a huge problem. One thing I do want to say, though, is this means that every single contestable objective is 500 gold, right? I can't just take Dragon without your team showing up and fighting me for Dragon. The timers are announced. We all know what's going on. Like, all this stuff's happening. Whatever. What's going to be interesting, though, is if we have a game where there's a really strong top side and a really strong bot side. Like, if, Nocturne is camping for Renekton or whatever, and Renekton's getting ahead, and there's enough of a golden XP lead that they're winning through top side, they get the first turret, they killed the Herald, oh, they're huge, Riven is, considering leaving the game. It's like, well, the winning bot lane can help get a Dragon and get 500 gold back to the team, which is only 100 to 160 to the Riven herself, but, like, if you're crushing by that much, you can cross map and get something. And that's something kind of interesting here, right? Is that this does something special, which is, because as you can see, outer turrets, inner turrets, and inhib turrets are worth even more. I assume inhibs and nexus turrets maybe are both counted in this. I don't know. I assume they're both base turrets, but whatever. The point is, though, that cross-mapping is now more valuable, right? So if I take, let's say I'm taking mid-outer, and you're going to take bot-outer as a cross-map against me, normally we both get 500 gold, but now I get 500 and you get 750. Or maybe more. It's like, that's actually kind of interesting. And in fact, if you want to consider what an outer turret is worth compared to a tier 2 turret, the difference is 300, I believe. That this is 500 and this is 800. So if you're taking top tier 2 and I take bot outer as a cross map, we're getting the same amount of gold. Now you're at my inhibitor line, right? Like, you've gained a lot of map pressure. I've gained comparatively little. But the actual gold value, if there's a bounty, means, a side lane tier 2 is worth a side lane tier 1 for the losing team, which I think is kind of interesting, right? I think that's okay. And then on we go. So I think it's kind of interesting. One thing to point out as well, depending on where it is that... okay, here we go. The amounts can increase up to an additional 60%, which means, a 400 gold inner turret could actually be worth 640 gold as the inner turret. This Baron, right, instead of 500 could be 800, which, pushes it even further as far as how much you're getting back. But worth noting that, again, getting this cross-map Drake could be worth 800 gold, and now the bounty is arguably worth more than the Drake itself. Which just, like, it doesn't have to be a negative or a positive. It's just, like, worth pointing out that this is what's happening. Objective bounties activate 15 seconds after a team falls below the threshold and deactivate 15 seconds after they rise above it. That said, the activation timer will extend if you're currently damaging that objective. So that's fine. So here's real quick the math on this. So this is just the baseline gold value of these objectives, which again is maybe a little bit fraudulent, but how much are you getting compared to before and after, right? So this is the basic value of the bounty, right? Plus 500 gold. Again, you're getting a little bit more on a Baron, you're getting a lot more on a Drake, right? Outer turrets, inner, mid, and inner side, or mid turrets worth 550, side turrets worth 800. But you can see that, like, for most of the turrets, the 50% gold increase. For inner mid, it's larger than that because inner mid tier 2 is not worth quite as much as the outer tier 2s. Inhib turrets are only worth 300 total gold. The Nexus turrets are worth 250 total gold. They're very, very low value in terms of actual income. So just, like, let that be known, by the way. Anytime you're like, oh, we really want to make sure we knock down the inhib turret, it's like, well, you're not getting that much back. It's 50 a person. Plus 50 local. Like, yeah, the map pressure matters because now you have an open inhib to go take, and that can be really valuable, but the only thing worth inting for is maybe a top lane or bot lane tier 2 because it's actually 800 gold. And of course, if you're far enough behind, you get the bonus bounty, 60% more gold out of the objective. Again, Dragons when behind. If you're, obviously delaying soul is valuable, but if you're never going to get soul, yeah, you're getting, a lot of money out of this, right? You're getting 800 gold on top of your dragon. That is really, really big, right? If you take top tier 2 and I take a bounty dragon, I'm getting the same gold plus a dragon buff. Like, this is a pretty big deal. Now, this is probably going to do some things to shake up how macro is done. It probably means winning teams need to, like, really relentlessly cross their T's and dot their I's. They're going to be less likely to go, oh yeah, just go take dragon. Oh yeah, go take dragon. We'll go take something else. Because they don't want to give those things up. Now, in general, I would say in the sort of later game in pro play, the team that was winning wasn't giving up a dragon for cross mapping. In the early game, they would do it. Like, for the first 15 minutes, the winning team would give up dragons but take gold. And the losing team just knew, like, well, teams would rather kill towers. We'll get the consolation prize of killing a Drake. Okay, whatever. We got something going on. These stats matter a little bit. If we happen to get lucky, now we're on soul point. Okay, well, now, maybe we get around that way. But in those cases, we won't tend to see bounties, I don't think. I don't know what percentage of games we're going to see bounties. I don't know what percentage of games we're going to see bounties taken. I don't know how comebacks are going to shift, but like clearly there's going to be a few more comebacks. I think that's actually kind of interesting. So I think it's a really cool system. I think it's really neat. So we'll look at that as time goes on. So jungle changes. Chemtech Rift and Hextech Rift are going to be temporarily doubled. Okay, that'll be fun. Chemtech Drake, let's talk about what this one happens. So, Chemtech Drake buff grants up to 5% bonus damage per stack against enemies with more current health than you. If you get a Chemtech Drake, you do more damage against them. Okay, great. With 300 to 1,000 more current health than you. Okay, great. Worth pointing out that the way League of Legends is currently designed, champions don't have incredibly stark health differences in general. The differences tend to be in armor and magic resist. Now, I tend to dislike that. In fact, it's one of the things that I talked about in I'm scripting in my like fake preseason update. Whatever though, not that important right now. But this means that just because you are Braum or you are Cho'Gath, okay, Cho'Gath's not a good example. Cho'Gath actually prints base health as a champion. But just because you're against any given tank doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have this automatically. Now, as they buy stuff, it's going to happen, right? This is definitely something that's just like going to deal more damage against Maokai. Now, it's going to deal damage against Maokai up until he's down to half HP, and then it turns off, right? At level 12 or whatever, I've got 2 Chemtech Drakes, and I'm doing 10% bonus damage because he has 1,400 more health than me, and then we get him down to 2k health, and it turns off, right? Because I guess I'm curious like how these numbers are done. So okay, let's say we got a level 1. Let's say we're level 18, right? Just make the numbers easy, okay? 1,020 gold. Or 1,020 bonus HP, okay? So grant 5% bonus damage per stack against enemies with 1,000 more current health than you. Grant up to 5% against enemies with 1,000 more health than you. So I'm assuming it's linear up until 1,000. So if they have 500 more than me, I'm getting 2.5%. If they have 100 health than me, I get 0.5%. That's how I'm reading this, right? Is if they have any number at all, we get something. But as soon as they don't have any more current health than me, right? Because of current health, right? So once they get low, it's done. And by the way, if I'm like running in as Gore Drinker Riven and I get chunked down to 500, activate. I'm doing 5% bonus damage per Drake to everyone, and that is a lot of damage. Now, I want to point out, by the way, some math real quick, okay? So, Infernal Drake, if I recall correctly, is 4% increased attack damage and ability power. Always, right? And it's worth pointing out, if you're an auto-attack champion, like if you're playing Tristana, for the most part, that is straight up just 4% bonus damage. You just deal 4% more damage. That's it. That's the number because you're auto-attacking. And auto-attacks care about your base AD, they care about your bonus AD, and you're just like pushing that through one for one. Obviously with things like Veins, Silver Bolts aren't multiplied, but neither would they be for Chemtech Drake. If, Tristana's explosive charge wouldn't be multiplied as hard, like you'll get more AD, but, it's not going to get multiplied by the 4 to 5%. But for ability power champions, for mages, mages get comparatively less for an Infernal Drake than attack damage champions do because attack damage champions get to feed their base AD now into their abilities, and they get more out of it. So Chemtech Drake in general is going to skew slightly more towards mages because it's going to multiply everything compared to Infernal at the very least. Anyway, this is all to say, like, this doesn't seem absurdly strong. Like, it doesn't really seem that incredible. It's certainly good. Like, it's a benefit that, people can be happy to take, but this doesn't seem game-breaking, which you just wanted to point out. Okay, next up is Chemtech Dragon Soul. When a team owns the Chemtech Dragon Soul, they receive a buff that grants them a brief second life upon their next death. They revive with 80% base health plus 50% bonus health. So, in other words, if you're Ashe, you're going to revive with 1,600 HP. If you're, late-game Scion, you're going to revive with, 2,400. You're not going to get quite as absurd as a tank. You're going to gain some move speed. Melee champions gain more because they have to get back into melee range to do their stuff. Revive champions take 40% less damage and deal 1/3 less damage. And take damage equal to an ever-increasing percent of their starting health every 0.25 seconds. So the reason this is existing, as far as I can tell, is, and I think they could have done this without doing the take less damage thing, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to take an 80 carry case. Like, we're just going to be Ashe, okay? We're going to revive with 80% of health. So because we take 40% less, we have, 1 2/3 as much HP, really? So 1 2/3 of 80 is like 1.5-ish. So I kind of have 1.5x my health. So basically it's like, hey, if it's Ashe, don't kill the zombie. Attacking the zombie doesn't help you. It's going to kill Ashe very, very slowly. Don't bother. Also, Ashe has less damage anyway, so don't bother anyway. That's what it's kind of telling us, right? Now, that said, of course, Ash is going to take more and more and more damage and just fall over anyway. I don't know what the intended duration of zombie mode is, but these numbers basically all say, hey, by the way, don't bother focusing the zombie, it'll be all over soon. Like, of course, when you hit it, they'll take damage and they'll fall over sooner, sure, but this clearly is trying to say, hey, don't make them a priority target. Now, I feel like this could have been somewhat done by, like, reviving them at full health and making the decay stronger and even giving them like a shield to say no, really don't do it. That would be weird because then it'd be literally useless to hit the shield versus like, you know, you can still start the decay faster, but I don't know. The decay could hit the shield. There's ways of doing it. It doesn't really matter. It just feels a little weird that like there's a take less damage clause, which you can only ever see in the patch notes. You can have a hard time figuring out otherwise. That slightly rubs me the wrong way. There really may be a good reason to do this that like I haven't thought of, and you can't just solve it through other more obvious health bar methods. That may totally be true. Either way, it's a point that just says, hey, by the way, you don't really need to focus the zombie. It'll die on its own. You're only partially rewarded for it. This also allows you basically to live a bit longer in zombie mode without getting just punked down. Because, right, like imagine, you know, you're against 4 item Yasuo and you revive back up his Vayne and Yasuo just goes like auto crit Q and you're just like dead instantly, right? So this helps you say, well, I get, 3 seconds. And that I totally buy, right? I mean, that's clearly the design goal of this, right? Is that you don't get one shot when you revive as a squishy, which I totally get. All right, cool. Next up, Chemtech Rift gas zones emerge in 4 jungle locations, which is around red buff, around wolves, and around red buff. So not so much around blue, not Gromp, not dragon, red buff and wolves, right? That's the spots. Gas zones emerge in 4 jungle locations that camouflage any champion within it. Champions within the zone deal up to 10% more damage to enemies who have more current health than them. Maximum damage is achieved at 340 to 1020, based on attacker's level, less health than them. Yes. So it's exactly the same numbers here, which I kind of like, honestly. Chemtech Rift just gives you 2 Chemtech Drake buffs in the gas zones. I think that's really cool. I think that's really, I'm very, very, very happy that they're using the exact same mechanics. I think it would be really tragic if it worked in different ways because you have 2 different missing health things to track, even though the intent is clearly the same. I'm even glad the breakpoints are identical. I'm even glad the numbers are identical to getting to of the Chemtech Drakes. I think that's actually really solid. I'm glad. Basically, I kind of know this for a while. I've been told this and I agree with it. The point of consistency, I think that the number one benefit you get from using consistency in game design is to help learnability, right? If you learn one thing, the second and third and fourth thing also work that way because they're consistent. It's easier to learn the rest of the system. So you can get more complex, you can do more things. Like, for example, right, it's the first Rift buff that, like, does anything in combat. Okay, yeah, like, there's blast plants, and, like, some of the Rifts spawn more blast plants, and because some of them create, like, mountain terrain, you can Camille hookshot off them. Like, yeah, that exists, but this has an actual tangible combat benefit that, like, isn't immediately obvious. Like a blast plant and a mountain wall. Those are obvious. The Cloud Rift, you walk through and you run faster. You're like, oh, I get it. This is not immediately obvious, so the fact that it's exactly identical to 2 Chemtech Drake buffs is a big positive. Now, these camouflage zones that exist are not revealed by regular vision wards. Control wards only, an actual Scryer's Bloom, things like Kog'Maw are and whatnot. But hey, by the way, control wards, right? So they're basically zones of brush. They camouflage within it. And you can only control ward to see, because of course camouflage enemies are not revealed by vision wards. So if I walk into, some Chemtech stuff, your invis wards don't spot me going in. So there's really not much of a reason to ward those places. Cool. Seems interesting. Next up is Hextech Drake. Definitely a little bit simpler overall, but, maybe not, as we can see with the minimap here. So, 5 ability haste and 5% attack speed per stack. I think 5 ability haste is priced at 50 gold? I think that's right. I'm going to pause and look it up. 1 second. 50 gold per point. So this puts, I would say, Hextech Drake as easily the most valuable Drake in the game. So 5 ability haste, price is 150 gold. 5% attack speed is easily priced at 150 gold. So it's 250 gold per player. which then becomes, 1,250 total gold for the Drake. Now, there's an asterisk here. Vayne doesn't get much use out of ability haste, and Kiana doesn't get much out of attack speed. Let's pick a better option who really won't use it. I'm blanking on mages who will never auto-attack. Rise is not going to get much out of 5% attack speed, right? So in some cases, Hextech Drake is also half value, but you have some champions like Jax who want both. Riven, I think, wants both. Nocturne feels pretty good about getting both. So there's going to be some where they're going to be really, really strong here. Much like how Infernal Drake gave you 5% ability power and 5% attack damage, or 4% whatever. There's clearly a number here, at 100 AD, where it's 4 AD, and 4 AD is worth more than 5 attack speed. And it's also 4% more ability power, but who has AD and AP, right? So again, the point still stands that there are going to be some Drakes that are much, much, much better, but it's going to be situational and whatever. This is going to feel quite good though, right? It's going to be pretty strong. Anyway, next up is the Hextech Dragon Soul. When a team obtains the Hextech Dragon Soul, or Drake Soul, I guess, they gain a Chain Lightning that slows on the next basic attack or ability. It deals 25 to 75 true damage, so it is true damage, which is interesting, but it is pretty definitively less damage than Infernal Drake. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's not as much as Infernal Drake. Also worth noting that this does not scale off of AD and ability power, which makes it slightly better for the tanks who aren't scaling it in that way. Obviously, also, you can never get it level 1, so it's going to be, 60 to 75 true damage in any realistic situation, right? It does always still feel weird to me that they ever include level 1 numbers as though they're ever remotely possible. I just think it limits their ability to tune things slightly, because they can't actually control the lower bound until they make it start at level 10 or something. It's not a big deal, but it just stands out to me as a minor thing. That's the 3 additional targets, so 4 total. Slows by 35 or 45% if you're ranged or melee. Actually scales off other stuff as well. So let's think about a situation where you're really, really absurdly fed, like your Vagar, right? You have 1,000 ability power. That's plus 10% slow. Your 35% slow becomes a 45% slow. Okay, what about 1,000 bonus health? Okay, 2,000 bonus HP. That is a lot of bonus HP. That is a 4,000 health tank. That is late game. 55% slow. So it doesn't scale much, right? You're going to feel it a bit. It's going to be there. Cool. But the slow scaling barely exists, and I want, that to be kind of clear. I guess Jhin gets maybe some of the best out of this, where you can actually get, 400 bonus AD, and it's plus 12%. It's, again, not that absurd. Certainly good, right? We'll take the slow, we'll take the damage, it's valuable, but this is not, it's not blowing people up, and it doesn't turn into a root anytime, with any remote possibility. Hextech Rift is probably the most funky one, the most game impacting one, and this is intentional. They talked about it when they were, doing some of the blog posts leading to preseason. They said they wanted one that was a bit spicier. It's okay to have some rifts that are just way more incredible. And so you get hex gates that spawn across the map and allow champions to quickly travel from one location to its paired counterpart. Hex gates activated with a brief channel. It can be interrupted by immobilizes or damage. So it's interesting. Immobilizes or damage. I can't think of any immobilizes that don't deal damage. But I guess if you're shielded, it would do it. So the same things that stop recall, basically, right? The same thing that stop recall will do it. Each pair of hex gates has a 30-second individual cooldown per champion, so your entire team can take them. So what's it mean? Well, they're all mirrored, right? So we have one-way entrances that go out of the base into quadrants, right? So instantly, obviously, your jungle clear can be a bit faster by taking this and then going down to wolves and pathing down or whatever. What's interesting is there's a call that almost all junglers make, which is when they intend to start on Gromp or Krugs, they'll actually run down the lane, make sure that there's no shenanigans happening, and then take a couple seconds to walk back up. Even though it slows the jungle pathing slightly, it makes sure that they're more able to respond to plays. Any situation where there's remotely a possibility of a play happening down there. But now you're kind of getting ported out directly onto a camp. And normally you do want to clear for any mid-game clear, right? You're going to do Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, Krugs, right? You're going to go bot the top, or you're going to go, Krugs down, whatever. And in this case, right, portaling over, going to Krugs, then going down is pretty standard pathing. But in this case, if you portal over to Wolves, you might as well just do Wolves, right? There's going to be this sort of small metagame shift, a player choice shift where it's you might as well just kill the camp. You're literally on it. Why walk past to Gromp to go back up? Why not just kill the Wolves? You're literally already here. And then, is that going to change your behavior? Are they just going to go Gromp and back up anyway? Are they going to just, say, screw it, we're just going to get topside and go, Raptors upwards? I'm really curious which way that's going to go, because the fast way out of base is to portal, right? I bet you get to bot lane faster by, walking down, portaling, and then walking down. This is probably faster than going straight up and down, that like it's going to change the pathing of junglers slightly. In the case of going towards top, right, it's just like, well, we portal over and it's fine. In the case of, blue side going towards top, again, you're still going to make this pathing, but you're going to be on top of wolves. I find it interesting, right? I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think it's kind of interesting. Over the top of Baron Pit towards blue buff, this is going to be a pretty interesting one, as well as blue buff towards Dragon Pit. So this is going to be also interesting. It goes two ways as well, by the way, right? They're both entrances. So, we portal out, we get, red buff control, whatever. We need to contest Dragon, and we go whoop over the top, and now we're flanking Dragon. Like, this is going to be really wild. Like, this stuff's going to be really weird for how this is going to be handled. You're going to, like, warding the river is not going to stop people from going back of Baron Pit, portaling over, and being in the blue buff quadrant. Like, how many people are going to die trying to get their blue buff and just getting portaled on? That's going to be so wild. There's going to be so much people are going to have to learn about how to play around this that, like, it's going to be a thing. And by the way, it means you're going to control ward this brush right here, and you're going to control ward this brush right here. I'm pretty sure this should be in Vision. If this is not in Vision, this control ward, this is actually a mistake, I think, by the designer. But like, because this is for sure in Vision of this brush right here. But you're absolutely going to ward this stuff, right? I guess you could just do this brush. This brush would do it, so it doesn't really matter. You could do your blue, you could do this one, just like you do your blue, this one, so it doesn't really matter. There's two control ward spots. But like, yeah, that's going to be quite a thing. I know I saw some Reddit comments about like Teemo shrooming these. Yeah, makes total sense. Probably gonna do that as well. This is spicy. This is so spicy. Next up, we have Cloud Drake. So Cloud Drake, of course, is getting pushed around a little bit, considering that it wasn't getting much love. People didn't like ulti haste. I liked ulti haste; that was decent. But now it's out of combat speed, but also some in combat speed via slow resist, which I think is actually kind of interesting. It's kind of neat. In terms of kind of pricing out movement speed, keep in mind that 1% movement speed is about 3.5 move speed. So this is like 10 to 12-ish, 14 out of combat move speed. So it's like half a Boots' speed while out of combat. So you can kind of price it as 125 gold per champion if you're while out of combat, so that's still a little low price. Slow resist, of course, also pretty valuable. You can kind of price it as like half the value of Tenacity, but Tenacity only has Merc Treads, and Merc Treads are underpriced, so how do you really price Tenacity and slow resistance? Do you price Swifties at that? What do you do? I don't know, whatever. But, still kind of interesting, right? I'm happy it's a different mechanic. We'll see how good it is. Whatever, it's the move fast trick. That's okay. Rift Scuttler has less health on the first spawn, grants a bunch less XP, and slightly reduced in size to kind of denote that. So, less coin flip fights for First Scuttle, because First Scuttle is not nearly as important. Scuttle is the only jungle camp in the game that goes up in gold value per spawn. It also goes up in XP value, by the way, which, by the way, means that in the late game, Scuttle is the literal most important camp on the map. It's worth more than Krugs. In the early game, that is not going to be the case, especially with First Scuttle. So, okay, fair enough. Seems fine. No huge complaints here for me. And now we go into, I would say, the more meat of this preseason. It's new items. And basically, this entire thing is new items. The entire rest of this patch notes is basically new items. Okay, so first up, we get a new item called Crown of the Shattered King. So it is going to have a similar build path to... it's going to look a little bit like Everfrost. In that it's a AP health item, AP health mana item. It is basically Everfrost, right? So 70 AP, 250 health, 60 mana, 600 mana, 20 ability haste, but a really interesting, unique passive. So Safeguard. While Safeguard reduce incoming champion damage by 75%, so no tower dives, for 1.5 seconds. So you take 1/4 damage for 1.5 seconds. Once you take champion damage, it starts to fall off, and much like things like Banshee's Veil and whatnot, the timer restarts anytime you take champion damage. So basically, it is, survive the first round of burst. This means, think about a Zoe E. Well, the Zoe E is going to hit you, it's going to deal damage, and then 1.5 seconds later, you're going to fall asleep, it falls off, and Zoe Q hits you. So not a bunch different, right? You're going to take 1/4 damage from the first Zoe E, but the rest of the damage is going to do full damage. Let's look at a Malphite. Oh, AP Malphite's going to hate this. AP Malphite's going to get ruined by this. AP Malphite's going to have a really hard time poking this off and then dealing with things to you. If you're looking at someone like Riven, who's trying to like jump in and burst you one shot, right? EW, Q, swipe, 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 by the time Q3 is going to land, it's going to fall off. But like the EW auto, first Q, that's all getting blocked at 3/4. Looking at it like a Renekton combo, looking at a, Rek'Sai, like Prowler's Claw, Unburrow, first 3 strikes, like that's going to get blocked pretty well. Varus doing a big Q snipe. Now, Banshee's Veil is going to block more damage than this because it's going to block the entire spell. But yeah, it's, a lot of these things are going to get hit pretty hard. So I think this is cool, right? It is a, moderate health item. It is cheap, by the way. There's a new 2,800 gold AP tier. This might allow champions like Lux. No, Lux and Zyra don't feel correct. The stuff I saw online was people saying Rakan. I think that's actually a pretty decent idea. But you're right, it's people who want to build AP but still need to kind of frontline, and it's like, well, that's Rakan, and I don't know. There's a chance you could try this on someone like a Singed or something, you know, where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to run to the front line and, you know, absorb damage for a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it really quite lines up there, but we're going to find out. And I'm going to commit to doing a pretty early video in this preseason of finding the hidden OP, the interactions that people didn't think about right away, and getting those out to you. Also worth noting, though, while you're safeguarded and for 3 seconds after it's broken, so the first 4.5 seconds of combat, 4.5 seconds of the duration here, gain 10 to 40 ability power based on champion level. I don't know if the 10 starts at level 1 or if it starts at level 9. And the mythic passive is 8 AP and 1% move speed, when you consider that the old standard for ability power is 15 ability power, or if you look at something like Riftmaker, it's 8 and 2% spell vamp. They're, you know, clearly using, half the move speed, because move speed mythics have 2%. This is going to have 1%, 8 AP. So, okay. So we get to look at our first look at, they're in different order now. Oh, they got moved around from what I did patch notes. I'm sorry, we're going to have to scroll around a lot. Okay, so this is what you're looking at here, okay? Crown of the Shattered Queen. Let's make sure I got the numbers right. 70, 250, 620. Yep, looks good. 2,800 gold. Yep, okay. So it is about gold efficient. Now, this depends on how you consider ability haste should be priced. I think it should be priced at 250 for every 10% or every 10 ability haste. So I have it as slightly under price. That said, of course, it gives you some ability power. It gives you at least 218 ability power, up to a cap of like 8, almost 900 ability power. Actually, it would be, whatever, it would be about that. And yeah, this is like maybe quite good, right? If this isn't broken. Oh yeah, and safeguard, by the way, actually it should go back to 75%. It was 50% earlier on, became 75. The story behind that, by the way, was this item used to have a longer safeguard duration. It was OP in testing, so it got nerfed to 50%, and then it was underwhelming in testing, and so they buffed the safeguard back to 75, but kept the low duration. That basically the design ended up as higher potency, shorter duration, as the better look than the first glance of the item. And so again, yeah, high potency, short duration. Worth noting there, okay, in general, you can price the mythic passive at 220 gold per extra legendary, which is like not really that on this high side. Like, it's a reasonable mythic passive, so that's fine. But yeah, right, it's a solid, relatively gold efficient item. Oh, one thing I'm pointing out, by the way, is with the cost here, I am not pricing mana into the efficiency. Now, this is obviously this is maybe debatable, but I think it's reasonable to do. In a lot of cases, you are not actually willing to spend 800 gold to 600 mana. Keep in mind that people buy tier. It costs 400 gold, and it's, what, like 700 mana, right? People spend 400 gold and 700 mana. Half the price for more than this. Or is it 700? Is it like 660? I forget, something like that. Either way, moving on, right, that's half the price of this. So like maybe you could say, oh, half the price, you know, plus 400. You know, like something like this is maybe more reasonable to like compare it to the actual mana item that people actually buy because they want mana. But either way, that's like the relative efficiency, right? So comparing apples to apples, I'm cutting mana out of most of these items. Yeah, again, item looks pretty solid. And I'm comparing it to old Everfrost. Before the changes, you can see old Everfrost was, you know, of a similar efficiency here, right? In the 90s or whatever. Okay, let's move forward. Next up, we get a support mythic item called Even Shroud. So tanky supports felt pigeonholed into one mythic, which is Lock of the Iron Solar. Yes, absolutely, which is purely a defensive tool. So we're adding another mythic for the supports who want to engage offensively instead of relying on Locket's anti-burst. So Kindle Gem Aegis, still a fairly similar build path. Health, haste, armor, MR, all fairly similar. The mythic passive is granting all of the legendary items 5 armor and MR selfishly instead of the Locket's like aura thing. And so now you get this offensive option. After immobilizing champions or being immobilized yourself, cause that target and all nearby enemies to repent, increasing the damage they take by 12% for 5 seconds. And this is pretty similar to the Abyssal Mask unique passive, right? CC someone and give them a damage amp. This is now it as a mythic item. Looks pretty cool. Again, it's going to directly compete with Locket, so we can see here, if we compare the two items, they are quite similar overall. 20 haste, 200 health, 30 armor MR, all those stuff is the same. But instead of a 2 to 350 damage shield, we get a 12% damage amp, which means, by the way, if your team is dealing between 2 and 4,000 damage, there you go, right? Yeah, damage after armor MR, much like the shield would block this much damage after armor and MR. Now, again, it's also 2 to 4,000 damage per champion affected, right? Because if you're blocking, a good locket shield for 300 shielding on all 5 teammates, that's 1,500 damage, which means you need 10,000 damage coming in for Coruscation to be as good. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Is the, 5 armor MR to your team? Yeah, that's a lot, right? That's really valuable. It's a lot of stats. So, even Shroud is not definitively obviously better than Locket. Locket is a very competitive option. It looks really good. This feels really, really positive. But yeah, I could totally see Even Shroud being valuable, right? And look, it's like Rakan got specifically another toy yet again, which is kind of cool. Cool to see offensive mythic options here. Next up, we have Axiom Arc, a 3,000 gold legendary for Assassins. Serrated Dirk, Warhammer in gold. Pretty standard stuff here. 55 AD, 25 ability haste, 10 lethality. Whenever an enemy champion dies within 3 seconds after you've damaged them, so not killer assist, but you have to damage them within 3 seconds, refund 1/4 of your ultimate's total cooldown. So total cooldown, I believe, would be after ability haste, but like not counted that it's already ticked down 4 seconds. But it does mean that if you get 4 kills in a team fight, you're getting your ult back for the 5th. 4 kills and assists, right? With dealing damage to everybody. Seems pretty solid. Definitely could be really, really valuable. There's a chance we see, some kind of caster Ash builds and whatnot. And after the first 3 kills, you get a second arrow because it's only a 12-second wait. And that's how long fights take. So yeah, there's a really good chance you're getting a second ult. This could be really, really spicy. Could be great. We'll see. Let's compare it. We have old, current day Yoma's Ghostblade. What is this? Oh, this is we're just going to skip this for now. APMR. We're just going to skip. We don't know what this is. Who cares? Let's look at Yoma's Ghostblade for real. Okay, Yoma's Ghostblade, right? 55 AD, 15 haste, 18 lethality. Double check the numbers that are accurate. Yep, 25 haste, 10 lethality. So depending on if you price haste and lethality the same way that I do, because keep in mind, the base price of lethality is completely fraudulent. Serrated Dirk is incredibly overtuned and underpriced. So I made up a number. I put it as 40 gold per lethality, which I think is actually reasonably appropriate. So it's 10 more haste, right? 100 more gold, and 8 less lethality. Is that worth it? Who knows? Is the Wraith Step and Haunt valuable, or is the Flux valuable? Who knows, right? This is your kind of your comparison, right? This is your choice comparison. Which one do you like more? I don't know. But certainly Yomu's is burstier. Yomu's is burstier. Yomu's gives you out of combat movement speed, so you can get to those kills faster, and the item comes online because it's cheaper. Axiom Arc gives you resets. It's less upfront damage, but it's going to be better in a long-term team fight. Is that what you want? I don't know. You tell me. But it's not clearly better than Yomu's, which is like the obvious pick that everyone goes for right now. Next up, we have a new item in Shadow Flame. It is a Mage Legendary at 3,000 gold. It's a new Hextech alternate item, so we have another one of those on top of Horizon Focus and on top of the on-hit stuff that's built out there. Alternator plus these large rods. So again, Horizon Focus is kind of build. 100 AP, 200 health. Spoiler, Hextech Alternator has health on it. But 100 AP, 200 health is going to be a pretty similar price point to the new Horizon Focus as well. Damage to champions benefits from 10 to 20 magic penetration based on the target's current health. If they have 1,000 or less health, it's a full 20 magic pen. If they have 2,500 or more health, it's just the minimum 10 magic penetration. Anything in between there is going to be, some number, obviously. 1,750 is going to be 15 magic pen, which is like a pretty standard, like mid to late game AD carry and mage. So it's a 15 magic pen item. It's Sork Shoes in a lot of cases. Gains the maximum magic pen if they were recently affected by shields. Now I want to do some quick math on this one. It's not too hard to work out. Going from 10 magic pen to 20 magic pen can at most do 10% more damage. If you would drop them to exactly 10 MR and then drop them down all the way to 0 because of this, this would be exactly 10% more damage. It can never be more than that. It can never be more than 10% more damage. So how big is the shield? Now, a rank 1 Lux W against a high health target, a high health low MR target, theoretically could shield for 100 damage. And if you're going to do more than 1,000 damage to them, the Lux shield has now inted you. Is that likely? No, not really. A 2,500 health champion who has, functionally 0 MR left exactly, getting a exactly 100 or less point shield, it doesn't seem very likely, right? So it doesn't have to be exactly 100, right? But it's like, is it 10% of your outgoing damage? So again, you can theoretically find situations where that ends up being true, but it's not going to tend to be. Locket's always going to be better than this. Nautilus W is always going to be better than this. So things like that. Malphite passes always gonna be better than this. Like, I'm sure there are some small shields in the game I'm not thinking of, and that could be, relevant here. But yeah, I don't see this ever being an int again, because you're often going to already be at like 15 magic pen from 1750 current health, which is like very frequent, right? That's very common. And keep in mind, right, as soon as you've dropped them down, right, like unless you're doing like a full health Vagar ult and it's like that's gonna one shot, once you drop them to half HP, you're going to get this anyway, right? So it is very hard for this to actually be bad for you. Again, a Lux Laser actually doing something like 1,000 damage on the tooltip, 10% more damage at most. So if the shield's more than 100 health, it's still good for you. So yeah, I have a hard time, again, convincing anyone that Shadow Flame is like going to troll you if you shield someone. Just want that to be pointed out. Let's move on. Witcher's Approach is a new item. Tanks are getting a Tear of the Goddess build, 2,600 total gold. Tear of the Goddess Kindle Gem Ruby Crystal, so it's pure HP, 600. 500 base mana from the tier, plus 15 ability haste, and on we go. Okay, great. So it is health, mana, ability haste, gain health equal to mana. Obviously, you're going to stack up, strike an ability or an auto attack to consume a charge, and gain 3 bonus mana, doubled if they're a champion, so pretty similar stuff. And then we have actual Fimbulwinter. Okay, so 400 health, 860 mana. Right, so same health, mana obviously with the plus the tier, ability haste the same as well at 15, bonus with 8% of, by the way, 8% of total mana, it's not of bonus mana. Seraphs, I believe, is the only, unless they change Seraphs in this patch, and we'll see it later on, because Manamune is total mana, Fimbulwinter is total mana, and Seraphs looks like that is bonus mana, and I would like them to be consistent, personally. Anyway, let's move on. If I slow, so if melee champions slow or anyone immobilizes an enemy champion, consume 3% of current mana, so let's call it 1,000. 3% of 1,000, so 30, not a ton. And grant a shield for 3 seconds that absorbs 1 to 200 plus 60. Right, 5% current mana, 60. Let's call it 60 on an 8-second cooldown. So obviously it's really efficient converting mana into shield. But yeah, 1 to 200 plus 60. Again, if it scales from level 1, we're looking at like a minimum 150 to 200 plus 60. So, and it's worth pointing out, right, that like it only exists once you have Fimbulwinter, which is 860 total mana. So like that's already there. You're already level 9 or something. So you've already got your maybe 700 of your mana pool by this point in time. 600-700 for your mana pool. So you're like 1,400 max mana, something around there. And then obviously you have more mana items like a Frozen Heart, or if you went for a mana mythic like an Everfrost, you could have even more going on. You could really mana stack and try it. But if you're going Fimbulwinter, you're not going Seraph. So would you really? I don't know. Either way, the shield is increased by 80% if there's more than one enemy nearby. So this could actually be a 360 plus 60. This could be like a 450 point shield in the highest, which is like a large shield. 450 first shield is very, very big. If you Malphite ult into a team, you're getting a 470 point shield. Seems good, right? So let's talk about what this is now. So we had this already. So here is Anathema's Chains versus Fimbulwinter as an item. So let's go ahead and look back at what the item does. Fimbulwinter is 400 health, 860 mana, 15 haste. Okay, so 860 mana, 15 haste, and the 400 health is 400 plus 640, which is what I'm considering a level 9 champion's base mana to be, and 860 for Fimbulwinter times 8%, which, by the way, only gives you 120 bonus health. So it's 520 bonus health. The right, again, it's giving you plus 120. This is already rounded in right here, so there's no real efficiency here. Like this is a 0 right now. Obviously, if you get like a Frozen Heart, 400, like what's 400, right? 400 times 0.08. Your Frozen Heart gives you 32 health. Like, it's not a big deal. We're not adding that much, right? If we do, 600 times 0.08, if we have, an Everfrost, it's 50 more health. Like, hey, it's 50 health for an Everfrost. Like, you might do it, but like, it's not absurd, okay? And then we have the Everlasting buff, which is, what can we do here? If we say, we have 1,000 current mana, okay, well, 100 plus 5% of 1,000 is 150. Okay, so 150 health is worth 400 gold. That's a way to pricing it out. Again, this could be much higher in a real world situation. If we were full mana, engaging with full mana with the Frozen Heart with more, we can of course get a bigger shield. We could do something like, 200 plus 2,000 is actually a real possibility. We could have 2,000 max mana without that much difficulty. Okay, yeah, again, 800 point shield, right, is actually possible. And then, 300 point shield, but that times 1.8, and yeah, 540 point shield, right? 800 gold worth of health, can be doable. That's the top end, right? That said, though, let's compare directly to Anathema's Chains. Because, hey, by the way, ability haste and health is what Anathema Chains gives you for less money and no stacking required. So if you really want the mana, okay, great, right? But in terms of raw ability haste and health, this item is far, 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 far worse than Anathema's Chains. Of course, with the shield, right? Can we make up the 130 health shield difference? Yeah, of course we can, right? The baseline expected shield is 150. If we get a shield off and block the damage, you know, we're probably getting the rest of it back. Again, it still costs more. We still have to stack the tier. We're getting less haste. We don't have Vow, right? But yeah, if we're going to get more than one shield in the fight, okay, right? We get more shielding. Okay, but like Vow is going to block 30% of the damage and give someone negative 20 tenacity. Is that better than a second shield? I mean, really, like, if I'm picking the Azir and I'm taking 30% less damage from a 2,000 damage Azir, that's 600 damage. Well, guess it's better, right? Like, guess Anathema's is better, right? So, you know, this is why I do these kind of comparisons, because we can actually compare the items, you know, in a fairly apples-to-apples kind of comparison. Okay, again, mana is valuable. Of course it is, right? Yes, of course. If we're not going against exactly one target that we're going to Anathemas, then yeah, the shield's probably going to be better. But, like, you know, here's the comparison. It's not obviously Fimbulwinter in all cases. It's not obviously Anathema's in all cases. Okay, good job. And this is, by the way, why I like when items have the same price pool and the same stats, right? I actually wouldn't mind if Fimbulwinter having 20 haste, just so I could more directly compare to Anathema's Chains. Actually, Anathema's having 20 haste is kind of an oddity, because Mythic's supposed to have multiples of 10, 20, and Legendary's supposed to be multiples of 15. But in this case, we have a 20 from Anathema's. It's whatever. It's not a big deal. But again, yeah, it's why I like similar price comparisons, because it makes it much easier to compare the items directly. All right. So they're adding some variants to tank mythics. Bombay Cinder and its upgrades, all the Immolate passives, now basically deal a bonus tick if it would execute. So instead of doing, you know, 20 damage, 20 damage, 20 damage, it's going to be 20, 20, and then 40 damage and kills the minion. It is minions only, right? It is not monsters. It is a last hit benefit to tanks. I don't know if tanks are already elo skewed, like in general, if tanks are overperforming in low elo and not doing well in high elo. I don't know. This will technically push that way slightly, because if it's easier to last hit as Tank Cho or easier to last hit as Tank Malphite or whatever, I mean, Malphite already is a Bronze Stomper, right? So now Tank's last hit for you. It's not a huge problem. I don't think it's a bad change by any means, but it's going to make it feel pretty good. Next up, we have a change, a strict buff to Frostfire Gauntlet. And this really does feel like a strict buff. I mean, it actually is. So, creates a Frostfire that slows enemies. Yes, it does. It slows enemies. It also deals bonus damage on hit. Frost Field for 1.5 seconds. That deals magic damage to all enemies in the area. Enemies that move across the field are slowed. Slow rate and cooldowns are unchanged. Yes, indeed. So let's look at the math. Oh, yes, we have some AP items. So we're going to scroll around. And where are we going to find... Do we have it? Did we not write this down? We might not have our boy Everfrost. Oh, yikes. All right, well, we're missing out on not Everfrost, but Iceborne Gauntlet. So sorry about that one. Thankfully, it has the exact same price as old Turbo Chem Tank. So here is Everfrost. But instead of, you know, supercharged and this mythic passive, it is a, you know, source of ability haste and health and armor magic resist, right? All summing up to this number. Of course, Immolate itself is valuable. So, hey, keep that one going, right? Keep in mind, Immolate is going to be around... 28 DPS the instant you buy it, because it scales up with character level. So the 10 to 30 is completely fraudulent. It's, you know, basically 25 plus 1% of bonus health, which is going to be, you know, 25 plus, well, instantly the 350, right? So it's 28 DPS when you buy it. And then we're going to, hey, we're going to get max health here. So for a level 9 tank, right, we're at like 1200 HP or so. And this adds another 350. So, you know, we're at 1500 max HP, maybe 1500. Yeah, I think 1500 is reasonable. Well, 1% of 1500 is 15. Half of that is 7. Assuming it scales 1 to 18 like the other stuff does, it's 50 plus 7. 57 damage. Whap! 57 damage on hit. It's 2 to 3 Sunfire ticks when we auto attack. The scaling, again, I want to say is arguably worse. It is 0.5% max health and 1% bonus health. So in terms of buying more health and scaling it up, that doesn't exist nearly as well, considering that Immolate, by the way, yes, still exists. Immolate deals damage every second. This thing still has its, 5 to 8 second cooldown. So the DPS of Frostfire is definitely going down, but it's got this decent feeling chunk that's going to hit minions and going to help with wave clear. So tanks get even better wave clear, should feel pretty good. Does damage to all enemies in the area, does some upfront damage. If we're level 18 as a tank, by the way, we Frostfire Gauntlet, right? We have, let's say we're really late game, we're at 4,000 max health, which is again quite late, but possible. We're getting 20 bonus damage off this, so it's 120. Cool. Okay, 120 bonus damage on hit. It's not nothing. It's not huge, but hey, more damage to the tanks. Okay, Frostfire Gauntlet seems pretty good. Next up, we have Turbo Chem Tank, supercharged, unchanged. Immolate is entirely gone. Mythic passive now actually adds health on top as well. And instead of Immolate, we get an extra piece on Refuel. Moving and dealing damage fills up the Chem Tank. So the same stacking mechanic as Static Shiv and Rapid Fire Cannon. Static Shiv's gone, so Rapid Fire Cannon. Storm Razor and Fleet Footwork, moving and dealing damage, fills up the Chem Tank. Although arguably, I guess it's dealing damage, which might actually mean tank spells as well, not just auto-attacking. So, okay, cool stuff. At max stacks, your next attack deals 40 to 120 plus 1% max health and 3% movement speed. So if I have 400 move speed, which is just I'm melee and reasonably fast and have boots too. Actually, I mean, that's mastery with boots too, but still, 400 is a reasonable approximation. That's plus 12. So not a ton unless we're ghosting or using Chem Tank. Although Chem Tank stops on its own because you get in a melee range and your haste turns off, so maybe it's going to carry over for a second, but that's going to be hard to make work. Whatever. Either way, plus 12 is reasonable for this. 1% max health. Again, we're looking at, 1,500 if you're buying at first item. We're looking at 4K if you're buying at last item. So 15 to 40 bonus damage. Okay, yeah, so, a solid 100-ish to not quite 200, but not that far off from 200. Late game, my Turbo Chem Tank does 200 damage up front, but I no longer just chain burn things. It is very much now the lower overall damage active item. Because we're losing the Immolate passive, keep in mind, right? Immolate was doing 35 damage late game or so. So if this is doing 160 or something, 5 seconds of Immolate, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you were getting that. So this is potentially a nerf, honestly, to Turbo Chem Tank. It could actually happen. That said, the increase against monsters is quite big. Keep in mind, you are getting to walk to the next camp and then whack, hit all these raptors with 100 and call it 100 damage. Kind of the max health and everything. 100 damage, which actually becomes 275 damage. I walk up to raptors, I auto attack, and I do 275 damage to all the raptors. That's gonna almost one shot all the small raptors, right? We're getting halfway there, and it's okay, well, the rest of my not Bomby Cinder, but the rest of my machete burn, my Nautilus ear, whatever, there's a real possibility here that this actually works. And also, I have no idea how fast this stacks up, right? Because this is still more damage than Bomby Cinder itself, right? If this stacks up to full every 4 seconds, it's just straight up more DPS over almost any teamfight duration than Bomby Cinder. So I don't know the rate here, but it could easily be just strict buff. So that, I don't know that answer, right? I just don't know. And of course, the buff to the mythic mythic passive. So here's Turbo Chem Tank before and after. Obviously, the initial stats are the same. The total cost is the same. Supercharge is the same. So it's yeah, we have, if we're picking a number in the middle, we're yeah, we're about 4 times, 3 times as good. I'm using this as Spellblade, by the way, but it's AoE, so it's not really fair to call it Sheen. But I'm pricing this as a Sheen proc. Again, a little fraudulent, I know, but whatever. And then, yeah, instead of 5 haste, it's 5 haste and 50 health. So we're another 250 gold mythic passive. And then we have Sunfire Aegis, basically just getting 5 armor, 5 MR, and also 50 health on the mythic passive. So a buff to the mythic passive. And the gold efficiency, of course, goes up a fair bit to 86%, which is on line with Turbo Chem Tank and such, which I think is a good thing, realistically. I feel like I talked about this last time when we were talking about Sunfire and tank item updates. Is it can feel really weird if the greedy option is actually less efficient, and now it's actually on par, which seems good. And it still has the stacking Immolate stuff where you can do more and more damage and everything else. Okay, move on to the first changed legendary for tanks. We have new Abyssal Mask, so still quite cheap, 2,700 gold. In general, tank items tend to be priced a little bit lower, which is a good thing. The build sort of path is better, I would say. I mean, Kindle Gem and Spectral Cowl are just amazing to buy. They feel outstanding. They feel better than Giant Spelt and Negatron Cloak do, at least in my opinion. And you have, kind of a less of a hump to go over. So in general, I'm just a big fan of this change. Like, this would be a strict buff, I would think, in and of itself. 50 more health, 10 more ability haste, and up to 30 less magic resist. But instead of immobilizing enemy champions, makes them take 15% for 5 seconds, which of course is the new mythic up here with Even Shroud, which is the new Even Shroud buff, basically, right? 12% for 5 seconds, and AoE. We go into Abyssal Mask, and it's, well, curse nearby enemy champions, reducing their MR by 5 plus 1% bonus health, a max of 20. Now, to be fair, this would be 1,500 bonus health. Yeah, 1,500 bonus health, which is like not terribly unreasonable. Like, it's 4 items, to be clear. Or, I mean, I guess if you go for, like, Sunfire plus Abyssal plus Warmogs, you probably get it on 3. But, okay, sure. Now, again, want to point out that reducing their MR by 20 is up to 20% more magic damage taken. In most cases, it's not going to be that much. But worth thinking about. That, in the ideal situation where everything lines up perfectly, Abyssal Mask provides 20% more magic damage to, ideal targets. But not 20% more physical damage, right? It is built to make mages deal more damage and to be, surviving more magic damage. Now, worth pointing out that for each cursed enemy also gains 7 MR, so up to 35 MR. And it's, by the way, curse nearby enemy champions, reducing their MR. So if I am playing Cannon at max range, I'm getting absolutely nothing out of Abyssal Mask. I must be next to them to get value here, which means Singed is that. Singed is near enemy champions. Singed will reduce their MR and deal more damage. This is a flat pen item for Singed. How interesting. If I choose to be a bit more offensive as like a Maokai or something, or a Nautilus, and I mean, heck, AP Malphite, even a champion like Echo can kind of do this. Like, yeah, I'm not getting any AP, but I am getting some Magic Pen. Now, to be clear, though, right, this item by itself is worth 9.5 Magic Pen, right? Because I have 450 bonus health, which means 4.5 Magic Pen, which means automatically this is a 9.5 Magic Pen item for you. This is 9.5 Magic Pen for you. Now, if you go and build a Demonic Embrace, if you go and build a Riley's Crystal Scepter, if you go and build like any of these new mage, AP health items that have, I think, like 250 health on them, something like that. Let's see, I'm going to go double check on Crown. Yeah, 250 health here. So it's like, okay, we have 250 health from that. We have Abyssal Mask for another 450. We're at plus 7. So now we're at 12 Magic Pen for like a very standard build. Okay, we have a 12 flat Magic Pen item. If we have Sork Shoes, we have 30 Magic Pen. Sork Shoes, Crown, Abyssal Mask, 30 Magic Pen. Permanently, for like any melee mage. Seems good, right? Like, seems good. Seems great. So that's kind of cool. And of course, if you are against the entire enemy team, it has more MR than before. So let's compare Abyssal Mask before and after. See if we can find it, because everything is all over the place. Here's Abyssal Mask before and after. Yep, it was 80% gold efficient, but you had Unmake, which could have been quite good, of course. This has, at least 9.5 Magic Pen, at least 7 MR. Technically, you could argue it is less efficient, since there's 30 less magic resist, but of course, every 7 MR, we're going to get closer and closer. If we, let's say we do 58, right? If we do 58 magic, yeah, we're better. If we do 51, we're arguably better. So, if you think health and haste and all these things are priced effectively, we got to fix that. I knew there was going to be some mistakes in this one. Wait, did I do this wrong? No, I did it right. Okay, cool. So yeah, what if we go back to 30? So maybe 37. And yeah, literally just like buy existing. As long as you consider that, as long as you believe that all stats are priced appropriately, 50 health and 10 haste is worth the 13 magic resist drop, or 27 magic resist drop. Now, you might not consider that to be true. That's totally reasonable, right? If you're building this to survive a one-on-one against a mage, right? If you have to split push against a fed Gwen, this is not necessarily the ideal item, especially if you're not dealing magic damage. It is probably worse at surviving Gwen than other options are. But, if you're going to team fight, then yeah, it's outstanding, right? And obviously it has, again, the offensive bent. This magic pen helps you. It obviously helps your teammates as well. Cool stuff. Next up is Force of Nature. Force of Nature now takes up the spot that the other one was kind of in, right? Force of Nature is now that no, I'm just gonna survive this. Let's just this is the more obvious. I want to take tank magic damage option. So a bit less health, a bit skewed more toward MR. I'm always a small non-fan of this because hey, what's the better team fight magic damage item? 450 health and 65 MR, or 350 health and 70 MR. 100 health, 5 MR. Right? Like I kind of dislike things like that. Like I dislike that the stats are skewed, that there's not one stat that's clearly better on the other and the rest is apples to apples, right? Like I would have preferred that. Like why can't they both be 400 and then, go on from there? It's a really, really minor thing, but like if they are both 400 health, 65 MR, I don't know. You could then just like directly compare the unique passives. It's a really minor thing. It doesn't really matter, but let's move on. Okay, so MR up by 10, health unchanged, move speed unchanged. So far, strict buffs. Absorb has changed. Instead of giving you move speed and magic resist per stack, it's now going to give you a stack of Steadfast, which initially does nothing. But then when you're at 6 stacks, you take 20% less magic damage and have 10% increased move speed. 20% less magic damage, by the way, is a lot. If you somehow had 0 MR, it'd be worth 20 MR. If you have 100 MR, this would be worth 40 MR. Considering that you are a melee champion, almost certainly with a Force of Nature, you're at like more like 120, which means this is worth this would be worth 44 MR. In any realistic situation, this is at least 44 MR on this item, by the way. Which, okay, then goes back and says, oh, well, clearly it's one that says, while at 6 stack of Steadfast, take reduced magic damage. Like, of course, that's actually the answer, right? So it's very clear, like, this is the deal more damage one, this is the take less damage one. Like, and this is nice. And by the way, this is helped by the fact that these stat lines are very, very close together, right? Yes, again, I would have liked literal identical numbers, but the fact that they're close enough makes it pretty easy to say, oh, well, the 20% less damage taken is clearly the thing. So where is Force of Nature? Because, of course, I've lost everything because things were reordered since when I did the patch rundown, and I forgot to update all the stuff. Okay, so here's before and after. Again, plus 10 MR makes the item slightly more efficient, 84%. Okay, great. This used to give you up to 40 MS and 20 magic resist. This now gives you 10% MS, which, by the way, and I'm pricing this as 50 MR instead of 44 because I'm probably assuming you're going to have like a rune, like a stat shard, and you're probably going to have your legend, your mythic online as well. So I'm pricing this as 10% move speed and 50 magic resist. I am pricing this as 40 magic resist and 20 move speed. By the way, 10% move, or sorry, yeah, this is 20% MR, right? And 10% MS. So yeah, 40 MS versus 10% MS. Those are pretty close together. But 20 MR versus functionally 40 MR is much, much better. I don't know why I have these backwards. Like it's MS then MR and then it's MR then MS. That's really troll. That's my fault. I'm stupid. But this is definitively a much tankier item. The base MR is higher and the max stack durability is also much higher. So yes, there's a middle part here where you're like at 4 stacks and the old item would now have more MR because it's up here. Doesn't matter. Overall, new item is definitively very slightly stronger, and that's cool. Next up is Knight's Vow, getting a very, very light reshape. Base health regen cut in half. Basically, the old version is back. Now you redirect 10% of the damage they take. If they are very low, you take 20% now instead of just redirecting 15%. There's no move speed when they're low. And we have the Omnivamp passive back. 8% of the damage they deal to champions. So it's not Omnivamp in the sense that, it doesn't work on mini waves. It's not reduced for AoE. But like if you, go attached to a Fiddlesticks and Fiddlesticks goes and Crow Storms, 5 people for 1,000 damage each, you're going to get 8% of 5,000 damage. In general, though, I don't think this is that strong of a passive. Keep in mind that, what this basically reads, right, is take 10% of the damage that they take. And if you, put it on a standard 2,000 health squishy, you're essentially giving them 200 HP. Maybe it's a bit more than that. The first 1,700, you're taking 10% off. So there's about 170 health. The first 1,400 is 140 health, and the last 30%. Is 600 health, which you take 20% of, so it's like kind of another 120. So it's 14 plus 120, so it's more like 250 health, maybe 300 health, you know, if there's like any kind of healing going on. So, okay, Knight's Vow basically says, give an allied champion 300 health. That's like roughly, in the late game, that's like roughly the math, right? Give an allied champion 300 health is like roughly accurate. Also, you heal for 8% of damage they deal, which is going to be around like 2,000 in a team fight, right? So you're going to get, so it's like give an ally 300 health, give an ally 300 health, give me 150 health, right? So this item basically has 450 health extra kind of on, you know, on the stuff. That's like kind of the value. 450 extra health, roughly. So, you know, 1,000 gold-ish is like the extra value of this item. So Knight's Vow used to be efficient, but most of that efficiency was in health regen, which is a little bit troll. If we, in fact, delete this entirely, yeah, it's still, right, just, you know, 300 gold worth of meh. But it's worth pointing out. Again, sacrifice is worth about, you know, 1,000, maybe 1,200 gold. So, hey, if we do that, right, if we're looking at this and we're saying, hey, is it worth it? Meh? Meh, really? Right? Like, I don't love it. You know, if we price this at actually 3 ruby crystals, 450 health, yeah, Knight's Vow kind of seems bad. That said, though, right, like, you know, it's still worth everything else. Like, if the champion's gonna get shielded, it's gonna get healed, it's gonna get, you know, a zillion ult or whatever. Like, it's a multiplicative modifier, but this item kind of still feels bad to me. It's also 2,900, which is, like, I think too high for a supportive item. Like, I think like, why should this cost... Am I trolling? Is this... Hold on, I'm gonna pause and double check the price on this thing. Yep, okay, another human mistake. 2,300 is the price. That makes... Whoops, that's backwards. And that would be why this felt really troll. This is much more reasonable when it's priced appropriately. 2,300 is actually, you know, the kind of price you'd be looking at. Yeah, okay, valid. Sure, yep, 2,300 gold seems pretty reasonable, right? In the new version, yeah, okay, we are paying for all this, but this now lines up as about the numbers I would expect to see, and that feels quite a bit better. So, okay, cool beans. Yeah, I mean, this would have been, you know, around that same, you know, maybe 800 gold mark, right? So, you know, that's how the old one was, more or less. Again, if you want to, like, discount health regen, yeah, there's a reason people weren't buying it, because it was only 90% gold efficient. Obviously, health regen was some of it, like, it had some value, but... Okay, that makes more sense once we actually do the numbers appropriately. All right, next up, we have Aegis of the Legion, just getting a little bit cheaper. Instead of 1,500 gold, it's 1,400 gold. Okay, cool, great. It's not an item you, like, go and seek after, so it doesn't really matter. But from my memory, Aegis was one of the most expensive forms of ability haste in the game, which was just, I think, just kind of silly. In general, tank items all have overpriced ability haste for some reason. Kindle Gem and Aegis are both this way, which was kind of silly to me. I'm happy about this change, though. Gargoyle Stoneplate being 100 gold cheaper is actually a very big deal. Tank items roughly cost 2,800 gold. That's, like, generally the price point for them. And so I am actually a big fan of... this is also in my fake preseason update, by the way. Of further cementing items into, like, price tiers and being like, yes, tank items cost 2,800 gold, right? And 80 carry items, they cost 3,000 gold, and mage items, they cost 3,000 gold, and, like, there's a price point, right? This is what these things cost. And then, hey, if you want to go 400 gold higher, there's a big item, right? Infinity Edge, Death Cap, TBD, Gargoyle Stoneplate, right? And if I wait 400 gold, I get a cool, like, good capstone item. Because, like, Stoneplate is very strong. It has a lot of good stats on it. It's a really good item. But it's so much more expensive than all other tank items by such a huge degree. Like, for example, right? Abyssal Masks cost 2,700 gold. This thing costs 33. It's a 600 gold difference. And you can just buy Abyssal Mask, right? Like, that's why I feel like a lot of people don't buy Stoneplate, is because the price difference is so large. That's why people don't buy Death Cap as well, because the price difference is so large from other AP items. And so I'm glad to see this getting brought down. Again, I would like to see tank items just all show up at 2,800 and just, like, give tanks that price point, and then, like, put some other stuff at 25 that, like, you know, or 25 or 23 like Knight's Vow, where it would make sense. Locket of the Iron Solari, because Aegis got buffed. Locket total cost unchanged, 2,500. Okay, sure, no problem. All right, next up is mage items. So Everfrost is getting the same change that we saw with the new crown. It is now a 2,800 gold mythic, which, by the way, points out that Everfrost now has the same price point as the cheap tank mythics. That basically the mana health mage mythics are cheap, and then we have the other mage mythics, right? Ludens, Rocket Bell, Riftmaker, all those things are all at 32. And we have the the mana mage, the mana health mage mythics down at 2800. And so it's like, oh yeah, we're not doing the luxury of damage, right? Even the mythic passive with the bonus AP is going down. It's the crowd control one, right? And I actually like this a lot, right? I'm a huge fan of the idea that, hey, look, the items that are more utility-based, the Mortal Reminders of the world, things like Everfrost actually, where it's like, okay, I'm doing poorly, I just need something, or I'm not useful, let me just provide some kind of utility. I love that as the lower price point. I think it's really cool, I think it's really clever, I love it, I think that's a great spot for these items to be in. I'm a huge fan of the design of like new Everfrost, even though it's like very, very, almost unchanged, right? So, okay, for 400 less gold, we get 10 less AP and 5 less AP per legendary. Okay, first of all, 10 AP costs 200 gold. So if I say 400 gold for 10 AP, I'm up, right? So I power spike Everfrost 400 gold cheaper. I spike 400 gold cheaper, and I pay 200 gold worth of stats. But I'm still 400 gold power spike. Okay, I buy my first legendary. Okay, I buy my first legendary, I power spike my second item, 400 gold cheaper. And, I have 300 less gold of AP, but I've hit the power spike. Okay, I buy my second legendary. And I power spike 400 gold cheaper. Yeah, I had the same amount of ability power, right, as that 400 gold would give me, but I hit that power spike, though. Like, I finished Void Staff, or I finished Riley's, or I finished whatever. That's worth more than its weight in ability power. Okay, I upgrade boots. Okay, we're still going. Okay, I have my 5th item slot filled. I finished my 5th item this game. 400 gold sooner. And now I have a 5 AP discount. Now I'm 5 AP behind that price point. This is nothing but a gigantic buff to Everfrost, right? There's no way you can consider this anything but a gigantic buff to Everfrost. What's also worth pointing out, by the way, is AP is one of the worst places you can spend your gold. Every other offensive scaler with ability power every other offensive mage scaler is better than ability power. That's why Death Cap is like so absurd, right? It's like, oh, it's 40% more AP or something stupid. Like, it's that much AP to finally be okay, right? Imagine an item said you gain 40% more attack damage. Like, that item we bought by every champion every game. So, very, very big buff to Everfrost. I mean, obviously, it's 400 cheaper, right? It's really, really big deal. Okay. So, and more about the updates to that. Okay, so actually let's scroll down to now we have Everfrost before and after. And yes, indeed, it goes from 91% to 96% gold efficient. Want to point out, Glaciate is still the same, 100 plus 0.3. I could have fed in the AP, I didn't. It doesn't really matter. Also want to point out, new Everfrost versus Crown of the Shattered Queen now exists, right? So again, the stat lines are identical, 96% gold efficient. So you have Glaciate and a mythic passive versus Safeguard, Poise, and a mythic passive. I find it kind of interesting that Everfrost now has a nerfed, like, 2/3 value mythic passive. But, if the game really thinks 1% move speed is worth 2 AP, then fair enough. Now, I want to point out, I actually can go back for this a little bit. So, 10% move speed versus 20 ability power, right? Like, that's what we're considering here, right? In a world where you just, like, extrapolate to make the numbers bigger. It's like, okay, yeah, 35 move speed or 20 ability power. I mean, a Fiendish Codex or like an Amp Tome, right, is 20 ability power for 400 gold. Boots of Speed is about that 400 gold. Like, the prices clearly line up as that. Now, boots are kind of OP, and again, AP is kind of a bad stat. So, in terms of mathing it out, it's appropriate, but in terms of what's actually powerful, maybe not so much. I mean, in general, I would pretty much always take 1% move speed for 2 ability power. I think it's just a better mythic passive. Also, keep in mind, Poise literally just gives more ability power. And this is again, it's a really minor thing. I don't really care that much. It's not like that big of a deal, but it's like, hey, I buy Everfrost because I have the root. But what's funny is like, hey, it's an item with a bigger AP mythic passive. But really, in all cases, Shattered Queen always has more AP because of Poise. So like this, you don't buy it because of the AP mythic passive, but it also kind of lies to you. And I dislike that a little bit. It's a little, feels weird to me. It's not a really big deal. Like, it doesn't break the item. It doesn't matter. You're buying Everfrost because of the Glaciate, not because of the AP mythic passive. It just very slightly rubs me the wrong way. It's a really minor thing though. Oh yeah, and again, this is 75%, 1.5 seconds. Okay, great. All right. But yeah, again, same price point, same total stats. Okay, great. Let's move on. Demonic Embrace now exists as a new item, so 100 more health, temporarily 10 less ability power, but 2% of your bonus health is AP. Well, this item has 450 bonus health, which means we get +9, which means our AP is 69. Nice. So what this means is the item has 100 more health, the same AP, because by the way, as soon as we have almost any mythic. Now, certainly if we went like Luden's Echo Demonic Embrace, we'd have less AP than before. But if we do anything else, like if we do Riftmaker, Rocket Belt, Night Harvester, Crown, Everfrost, Tank Mythic, any of those, we're fine. Worth pointing out that Shogath can convert his bonus health into ability power. Cyan probably doesn't want to because Cyan has basically no AP ratios and he shouldn't be building Demonic Embrace, but any other max health printer can feel good about this one. And, you know, that can certainly happen. Keep in mind that if you buy, you know, something like a Warmogs or whatever else, yeah, that's all going to happen. And again, I want to point out, though, that it's not a huge amount, right? 1,000 bonus health, which is more than a Warmogs, is 20 ability power. Like, this is less than an amp tome for a Warmogs. This should not change your numbers that much. It's going to be there, right? Again, a full build tank build is going to have maybe 2,000 bonus HP onto it. So you're going to get about 40 AP. And hey, getting 100 AP from this item doesn't seem bad, right? Like, that's cool, right? Instead of getting 60, get 100. That seems reasonable. And I really, really, really like this. I really, really like this. And I mean, all the credit to the designers. I think this is really smart. Like, this is really clever of them. That there's these really cool items they need to hook in to like trying to tease out damage out of tanks if they want to go that way, right? Demonic Embrace, convert bonus HP into ability power. We have the earlier option with the new Abyssal Mask, right? Where I'm converting bonus HP into reducing magic resist. Like, I think this is all really, really good, right? We have items like Rylays. We have items that are self-reinforcing with Abyssal Mask and things like that. Like, I think it's really, really cool. The only slightly weird part is that we don't have an armor bonus health conversion. It's all magic damage. Right? I mean, Demonic Embrace is pure HP, and that's fine. Of course, the mythics give us both stats, and that's fine. But there's not an armor version of this just yet, which is not a huge deal. I guess technically, like Frozen Heart and Randuin's Omen exist because they convert bonus HP into the Rock Hard or whatever the passive is called, where you take reduced damage per auto attack. So there's something there going on, right? Like there is a conversion of bonus health into this. Either way, I think it's like really neat, right? That there's this cool build that's kind of emerging, which is like health stacking, AP stacking, and kind of building a bruiser that way. I think it's actually really neat. So in general, pretty big fan. I think it's cool. No longer grants bonus armor and MR, by the way. So this is pretty much, I would argue, in a lot of cases, a strict nerf for ranged champions. So let's actually take a look. But also the burn is now better for melee, right? So the 1.2% per second was already what it was for ranged. Melee burn is now stronger. No bonus armor MR, but instead you get 100 more health. So let's take a look at this overall. Where is Demonic Embrace? Here it is. Okay. So before, right, we just had this going on. If we got 10 armor and MR, it was this much, which means, you know, we're looking at something decent here. Obviously, we're buying it for the burn in and of itself, 4.8%. This was, by the way, this would cap at 20 armor and MR, so 380 could become 720, or sorry, 760, because it was 10 plus 2.5 per extra target. So, you know, in a theoretical world where we really are hitting the entire team with Singed Poison, which is not realistic, you know, it could be 760 worth of stats. But yeah, we're up to 95% before the burn. Yeah, okay. Obviously, a reasonable item. Seems okay. But now we have this item, again, 69 AP by itself if we don't have a mythic complement. Because the AP is the same, the health is up by 100. Obviously, it's looking a little bit better. We do not have that stuff anymore, so that's gone, right? And so it was 95% efficient. Now it's 90% efficient as a tank item. But the more tank items we buy, the more AP we get. And for melee champions, the burn is better. So it is certainly, I would say, what Demonic Embrace ends up being is more offensive than the old Demonic Embrace for tanks. It is quite flat for a lot of mages, right? Like a lot of range mages weren't going Demonic anyway. But, you know, losing 10 armor MR and gaining 100 health is not really a tankiness upgrade. It's not. This is definitely fairly damage focused, but it's going to give in almost all situations more ability power, and in truly all situations, more damage burn. It's a very powerful offensive item for melee champions who want to consider a bruiser playstyle. I think it's kind of cool. Next up, we have new Archangel Staff. Basically, instead of tier, amp, and NLR, it's tier Kindle Gem Blasting Wand, so a much better build path. That's going to feel a lot better overall. AP down by a bit, health added now instead. And instead of getting AP equal to mana, it's haste equal to mana. So Seraph's Embrace, what we're looking at here, AP is up by 15. Again, it has health, mana unchanged, right? So 15 health, but now gain health equal to bonus mana, 1.3%. And instead of increasing max mana, we have a health restore equal to mana spent. Realistically, almost all spells cost like at most 100 mana. There's almost no cases where it's any more than that. So 40% of 100 mana is easily within the 40. Right, it's 40% of mana spent up to this cap that's always going to be capped. So it's just always going to be like up to 40 mana per spell, basically, in almost all situations. If you toggle something like Karthus E, it's going to be, what is it, like 50 mana per second, something like that. So you're going to get 20 health per second for the entire team fight. Okay, great. So, a bit going on here, but let's take a look at the actual math if I do it correctly. Max mana by 5%, which is bonus mana. And again, yes, Seraph's Embrace is a bonus mana conversion. It's the only tier item that scales bonus mana instead of max mana, which I just think is a little weird, but whatever. Okay. So where is Seraph's before and after? Can we find it? Or did I int everything away? I know I made it. I know I wrote it down. Okay, we're going to control F Seraph's. There it is. All right, we're all the way down here. Didn't reorder things. Okay, get rid of the search. Okay, so Seraph's Embrace before. This is basically using 860 plus 600 as the bonus mana. Actually, to be fair, give me 1 second. I'm going to update some of the math. Alrighty, we are back. So here is basically the math here. This is using 1530 mana as our baseline. This is not going to be exactly accurate, but it's going to be close enough because we're getting into smaller and smaller numbers. I want to point out that the difference is 3.5. So what I did here is basically, so if you have a mana mythic and you have a Seraph's Embrace, you have 1460 bonus mana, right? But of course, the old one had the Awe passive. You had 5%, or the Empyrean passive, right? You had 5% more mana. Or more max mana, right? Sorry, let me double check what this said before. Increase max mana by 5%. Okay, I need to pause one more time and update it slightly more. All right, for realsies, this should be much more close to accurate. Now, again, there's a little bit more that goes on, but we really are quibbling over very small numbers here. So this is counting 1580 bonus mana. This is 600 for your mythic. This is 860 for the Seraphs itself. This is 5% of both that and your champion's base mana, which is going to cap out at around 1k, and gives us 1580 bonus mana. We have 5% of that. We add 65. We get about 144 ability power. So 65 became 144. We gain about 80 ability power from that passive. Hey, that's pretty strong. Of course, the item's been buffed by 15, but okay, whatever's going on. Obviously, it was worth 860 mana. It was a big ability power stat stick. It was a bunch of mana. That's how the item gave you, right? It just gave you those two stats. Obviously, a lot of mana is great. Okay, cool. It was even more mana, which, again, could have been, what is it going to be like, whatever the number ends up being, who cares? It doesn't really matter. 5% of that 1400 plus another 50 or whatever, it's, let's call it 200, is a bit less than that, but whatever, it's 200 mana, right? Do you really need another 1000 mana? I don't know, whatever, who cares? Okay, that was the old Seraph's Embrace. The new Seraph's Embrace has, of course, less ability power, but it has some health. It has that same initial mana. So what all can we look at? Okay, we have 1%, 1.3% of bonus mana equals haste, which is now a much cleaner, much simpler, just 1460 times 0.013, which is 20 ability haste, right? So we are losing 65 ability power. We are gaining 20 haste and 250 health. Now, is that worth it? I don't know. You tell me. Certainly, it is less of a just instantly offensive stat stick. But hey, I want to point out once again, though, and this is really, really true, ability power is the worst place to spend your gold. As a mage, there's a reason why mages go Void Staff's second item. They spend like 800 gold on the Magic Pen passive, because why bother building more AP when I can build Magic Pen? It's better than building AP. That's why. AP is not a good damage scaler for mages. Now, it's on everything. It's still a decent stat. You're still going to scale, but like you want to collect other damage passes to multiply your damage. That's just how the math works out. It is just, in general, going to be a weaker option. So I'm not convinced about all the naysayers who are like, oh my gosh, we lost 65 ability power. This item is terrible. It's like, well, if you want a damage stick, you have Death Cap, you have Void Staff, you have Horizon Focus, you have the new Magic Pen thing. Like, there are a million damage sticks in League of Legends right now that you can just buy. Like, there are a ton of damage sticks already out there. Deal with it. Like, go get those instead. This is going to be a, hey, by the way, it's a bunch of flat mana because, hey, this is the kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, we probably are spamming abilities with all of our mana pool. Hey, if we're going to live in a fight that long, we probably are going to be a little bit more durable. Like, I am totally fine with the item having this shape. I think it makes sense as an item shape. I think it's totally defensible. I think it's a totally reasonable item. Again, we're not even going to price the mana in any way. it is a solid source of a bunch of decent stats, and then you're going to get the rest of it here. So I think this is totally reasonable as an item to buy. Seems fine. I would say, you can go ahead and go for it. Seems like a reasonable item overall. Next up, we have Cosmic Drive. Cosmic Drive is getting a small update. It's not going to be that changed, but we are seeing another shift of items going slightly higher towards health, which I just find kind of interesting. Mages seem to be going in this direction. There are actually going to be very, very few non-health items left for mages. It's like Void Staff, Death Cap, some of the mythics, and that's it. Right? There's like 2 mythics, Leandries and Ludens. That's it. There's 2 mythics, Death Cap, Void Staff, and I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting, but not that I can think of on the top of my head. Let's move on. Cosmic Drive, still 3,000 gold. Fiendish Ether Wisp Ruby Crystal. I mean, instead of Kindle Gem Ruby Crystal. Yeah, so Fiendish and Ruby is still there, but Kindle Gem has become Ether Wisp. So, okay. There's actually no way this was Kindle Gem plus Ruby Crystal, right? Because I had way too much health. So this is probably a slight typo. Amp Tome, maybe this was. Who cares? Let's move on. Ability power down by 5. Health up by 50. Ability haste up by 10. So it's just like, here's the actual ability haste that you had. 5% flat move speed. And now instead of, getting the 20 AP, so 100, and the 20 move speed, aka this, and the 20 ability haste, aka close enough, damage against champions within 3 separate attacks or spells grants 20% move speed, decaying to 10%, and 40 ability power until you leave combat. So, wow, okay, quite a different thing. So what's it actually look like here? Well, we got to scroll back up to find ourselves Cosmic Drive. Okay, so Cosmic Drive was functionally always on, so it's just like it was a stat stick, right? It gave you a total of 80 ability power. It gave you a total of 40 ability haste. It gave you a total of 20 health, and it gave you a total of 20 move speed, 200 health, 220 move speed, which meant it was quite efficient. It was very good. There is a reason LeBlancs were always buying Cosmic Drive second, because it was a really, really, really good source of a lot of stats. Hey, you know what's interesting? This sure looks like a lot like the Seraph's, stat line people liked buying. So let's move on to the new one, though. Okay, well, it's got less ability power, right? It's got less haste. It's got more health. The move speed is really close, actually. So again, we can look at, let's say we take a 385 move speed champion and we times by 0.05. We get, oh, look, it's 20. Right? Like, it's the same number, really, right? It's the same number. The health goes higher. Again, the haste and AP are lower. Yes, absolutely, right? Less health, less haste, less... But, okay, a very much similar item. Okay, but we get Spell Dance, right? We get Spell Dance. We get 10 to 50% move speed, and we get 40 ability power. Now we get it later on in the fight, right? Damaging champion with 3 separate attacks or spells. So, we're not getting it at the beginning of the Lux combo, right? If we QR as Lux, we're getting Cosmic Drive to pop after the damage all hits. Now, if we, Q auto, E auto, R, or something like that, we are going to get it for the ulti and then have, some move speed for the rest of it. But this basically says, hey, if we're actually playing Cassiopeia, if we're actually playing Karthus, if we're actually playing Rise, and we're going to play with a lot of spells, if I have Poison Trail on and I Poison Trail, fling auto, Poison Trail tick, Cosmic Drive is now on, and all my Poison Trail damage has 40 AP on top. I gain a bunch of movement speed. I'm laughing. I'm singed. And hey, look, it's 250 health. It's ability power. It's, pretty doable. It's another long duration, bruiser-ish. Now, it's not a lot of health, right? Like, it's going to be a little bit tough, but, like, there's a lot of items that are helping a bruiser mage playstyle. This is great. Like, this is awesome. Well done, Riot, right? This is like another hit. Next up, we have Horizon Focus. It was pretty niche. It was a glass cannon item that basically gave long-range mages a lot of bonus damage. Yes, it was. We're broadening its use case so that more champs feel happy picking it up. Okay, so 3,000 gold is unchanged. Alternator and Fiendish Codex instead of Alternator and Needless Large Rod, so a much friendlier build path. Like, this is very easy to build. AP down by 30, 150 health, 15 haste. In general, that's a buff, right? So, yes, okay, theoretically, 30 ability power costs like 600 gold. But, well, guess what? We get 150 health and 15 haste, and Hypershot now applies to slows. If you buy a Rylaze, Horizon Focus is always on. That seems good. But also means like Lux E, it always works, even if you're in short range, right? So like there's a lot that goes on here. So where is new Horizon Focus? It's here. So Horizon Focus, old versus new, and then we're going to compare Shadow Flame since it's a new item as well. So Horizon Focus, right, 115 AP, 10% Hyper Shot. So here's some math for you real quick. So it's already too late. We've already seen it, but let's pretend you didn't see it, all right? Let's pretend you didn't see it. What would you price Hyper Shot at? How much would you be willing to spend? Like, if you're willing to buy Blasting Wands, for 850 gold to get 40 ability power, what are you willing to spend for Hyper Shot? What gold value do you give Hyper Shot? If you're willing to buy Blasting Wands, what are you willing to spend for Hyper Shot? Assuming you can trigger it literally at all times. What's the number? Or if you don't want to think about it in gold, how much ability power is Hyper Shot worth? How much ability power is Hyper Shot worth? Well, you might have already seen it from the slide, but it's worth about 55 ability power. Or more, which means Horizon Focus was a stat stick with 170 ability power on it. Did you know that? Did you know Horizon Focus had 170 ability power on it? It's a lot of ability power. Yeah. Item is pretty good amount of damage. This is why I say, hey, by the way, things like this, right? Ability power is the worst place to spend gold because Hyper Shot. So let me do the math for you, okay? So here's roughly where mages line up. Mages for non-ultimates, for a max rank ability, which, okay, there's a couple of asterisks now, but ultimates basically require more AP and non-max abilities require less AP. So, okay, it's always apples to oranges here. It takes between 300 and 400 ability power to, generally speaking, double the damage of an ability. So if you're looking at, Syndra, Qs and whatnot, LeBlanc abilities, all that kind of stuff, you're looking at 300 to 400 damage, 300 to 400 ability power to double the base damage of the ability. But wait, you're always going to buy a Mythic as well, right? Which is another 80 ability power. So if you want to double that damage, you need another 80 ability power. And we have Horizon Focus, which is another 100 ability power. So it's 300 plus 100 plus 80. And we're already at 500 something, right? So, now that we have, base damage plus 200 AP, okay, well, doubling this would take 500 ability power. Or to get 10% more damage, we would need 50 or so ability power. This is before runes, right? This is before you have Eyeball Collector stacked. It's without a Doran's Ring. This is, all that stuff, right? This is without stat shards, right? It gets worse, right? It's worth more and more ability power to get 10% more damage. So Hyper Shot is worth about 55 ability power. Now, there's some champions like Singed where the AP ratio is really generous and Hyper Shot's worth less than that. There's some champions like Elise where her ratios are trash and this is worth like 700 or 70 ability power, 80 ability power, 90 ability power. For things like her spells. Her auto hacks are very generous, but her spells are really trash. So it's like, oh, well, Hyper Shot is actually worth about 55 AP, and the later on you go, the more it's worth. So, Horizon Focus was actually a 3,600 gold item. It was like 120% gold efficient. And it was raw damage. You weren't, getting weighed down buying other stats. Horizon Focus was one of the most under-purchased items in League of Legends. And to be fair, though, it was probably worth, maybe actually delaying Death Cap. Because it came online 600 gold sooner and did a lot of things Death Cap would do anyway, which is just amplify all your damage by a large percentage. So now we have a new Horizon Focus, right? So, okay, AP, again, is down by 30, but we have some health and whatnot, and so as it turns out, right, if we're going to price 115 AP, 2,500, if we're going to price, health and ability haste, it's more stat efficient, right? It's worth more stats, and by the way, still a very, very big Hyper Shot. Technically, we have less AP, so, okay, it's kind of only 52 ability power worth of value, but, this item is absurd. This item is very, very, very good. Now, I will say, it is tough to say, hey, Singed, go spend 3,000 gold on 150 health. That's a tough sell when he can just buy Abyssal Mask. That's a really tough sell when you can buy Abyssal Mask and reduce their MR by 9.5 and get almost 10% damage out of it. It's going to be more like 5% in a lot of cases, but you're not getting 150 health for 3,000 gold, so you might just go Abyssal Mask. This is going to be a tough sell sometimes, but it's going to be broadened slightly, Echo Q instantly triggers Horizon Focus. Seems real good for an Echo. This seems great for Echo. This seems pretty usable, right? So Horizon Focus seems to be in a pretty good spot. So let's go back and compare Shadow Flame and Horizon Focus. So 100 AP versus 85 AP, 200 health versus 150 health. I mean, Shadow Flame certainly has more upfront stats, but we have the 15 ability haste, which makes them pretty comparable. Horizon Focus definitely is, more haste focused. And basically, a bit less health, a bit less AP, more haste, same price point. Okay. And I don't mind this, right? It's like, hey, the comparison is not too hard because the prices are the same. Okay. Well, we have Cinderbloom, which is 10 to 20 Magic Pen. Now, here's what gets interesting. Hypershot truly is worth about 50 ability power. Like, that's what a 10% damage amp is actually worth, because that's how you get 10% more damage through ability power. Like, that's actually fair to how the game actually functions. What's interesting is 10 Magic Pen is priced at 300 gold. But 10 Magic Pen could also be 10% more damage. And this is where pricing things as gold efficiency is really fraudulent, because these are really, really similar unique passives. They're really similar. They both deal 10% more damage. And in the case where we, backdoor calculate it as ability power, it's 1,000 gold. In a case where we use Sork Shoes as the example of what it costs, it's 300 gold. This seems fraudulent. And it is. These are very similar unique passives. Like, ultimately, that's what you need to consider. These are going to have pretty similar situations. But obviously, if you are against squishies, you're going to get more out of the flat pen. If you're against tanks and you're, only getting a 5% damage amp, Horizon Focus is clearly better. And so you have a pretty good sort of choice comparison here. Next up is a Void Staff change. So Void Staff is going to be 100 gold more expensive. It's going to give you 5 less ability power, but it's going to give you 5% more Magic Pen. Blending Shield Blasting Wand 800. Okay, cool. Yeah, nothing new about that. So let's look at Void Staff. Is it above or below? I think is it below? It shouldn't be below. Oh, it is below. Interesting. Huh, I'm surprised by that. Okay. Because we have this. Okay. So we'll get this. Actually, we'll do this later. We'll do the calculations later. Okay. So we're going to be here. Here's Void Staff before and after. Okay. And this says, okay, well, we're 2,700 versus 2,800. Theoretically, we are 100% gold efficient. Magic Pen is 45% versus 40%. There's not much to say here, right? This is another math problem. So, okay. Let's start by doing the calculation for Shadow Flame. Okay. So, we're going to basically look at two situations, okay? We're looking at damage amp and the price of damage amp and a 300 AP equivalent, right? If we are somehow buying Shadow Flame first item, or, we're essentially going to prorate Sork Shoes. Here's target MR between 30, which is the lowest any champion realistically spawns with, and 285, which is the highest I'm willing to put a tank, because we don't really need to go much higher, okay? And this is, price, not 1122. Okay. So if I have a target with 30 MR and I get 10 Magic Pen, that means I do 8.3% more damage. Because that's the math. That's the math of 10% damage amp. 30 magic resist, 8.3% more damage. Obviously, it could go up to 10% more damage if they had 10 and we had, more sources of Magic Pen. I didn't do that because I don't care. Well, doing 8% more damage, if I'm, a level 9 champion with max Q and I only care about my Q damage, and it takes 300 AP to double my damage, that's the equivalent of buying 25 ability power. Well, buying 25 ability power costs 544 gold. Well, it seems to be that 10 Magic Pen is actually cost 311 gold, because keep in mind, right, this thing is efficient. Now, we could theoretically, here's where it gets weird, right? Because my understanding is legendary items are meant to be between 5 and 10% free efficiency. Right? And of course, it's really easy to say, well, here's a stat stack of ability power and health, so just give me your efficiency. It's like, well, Cinderbloom is 10 to 20 Magic Pen. Like, that's already, 0 to 10% gold efficient, right? Extra efficiency. If you expect to be like 15, that's already 5 to 10% gold efficiency. Like, maybe they're pricing Cinderbloom appropriately. Maybe, right? Like, kind of. That's the math. That's the intent there. So is 300 gold appropriate for the price of this item? Are you paying 300 gold for this item? Are you really paying 500 gold for the item, right? Because, here's the weird part, right? It is a 3,000 gold item, but it's meant to be bribing you, which means it's meant to be worth 450, right? Because we need 5% somewhere. This pass is meant to be worth 450 gold. If we're going to use that as our calculation, if Shadow Flame is meant to be an okay item, playable at all, it's meant to be 450 to 600, right? That's how we should really be pricing this. If we're keeping up with this efficiency calculation, it's meant to be worth 450 to 600. Now, 20 Magic Pen in our old calculation is 600, so maybe it's fine. But like, you see this gets like a little funky, but we're gonna price it at 311 for now. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should, who knows? But if we price it at 311 for 10 Magic Pen, what are we getting out of 10 Magic Pen? Well, it is 75% more efficient than buying raw ability power. Yeah, makes sense to me. Okay. If they have 45 MR, they've leveled up a few times, they have some bonus stats, right? Well, it's worth 22 AP, 7% more damage. Still 480 gold. So until they have 100 magic resist, it is gold efficient, and really, 100 19 would be equivalent. So if they have 119 MR, investing in Shadow Flame to get 10 flat Magic Pen is going to give you a 4.8% damage amp. And, in a champion with reasonably generous ratios where it's worth 300 ability power, that is equivalent to the price. And here we are, right? It is a perfectly efficient, 100% gold efficient item. If my AP ratios are really generous and really good to me, it is 100% gold efficient against 100-something MR champions. Now, I don't want to buy a 100% gold efficient item. I want to buy good items. I want to buy Void Staff. I want to buy Horizon Focus. I want to buy Sork Shoes. I want to buy Cosmic Drive, right? Like, I want better than 100% gold efficient, right? I want 115% gold efficient for me to buy this stuff. So, okay, if I'm only ever getting 10 Magic Pen, it's really worth it for any moderately low magic resist. But wait, most champions aren't that generous with AP ratios, right? I have a Mythic. I actually have AP on this item itself. It's actually more reasonable to call this a 550 AP equivalence, which means this 8% damage amp on 30 MR, yeah, that's actually 46 ability power, not 25 ability power. Oh, yeah, it's worth 1,000 gold. Like, if you were to convert this into ability power, it would be 1,000 gold. Where have I seen this before? Where have I seen this before? It's that number. Look. Oh, who could have seen this coming? And that's, of course, at 10 pen, right? Not 20 pen. And so it goes down, it goes down, it goes down. Now, it's worth pointing out that against basically all targets forever, Shadow Flame is, right, more gold efficient than raw AP. Of course it is, right? Because, again, 10 Magic Pen for 300 gold against 285 MR is better than its gold in AP. Again, AP is a very bad stat to try to consider as your choice comparison because it's not very good compared to the things you could buy as a mage. But, right, choice comparisons mean we have Horizon Focus and Void Staff and, Demonic Embrace and things like that. So let's look at it, right? Because, hey, now it gets a little funky here, right? But essentially, right, the total price points are really similar, right? They're 80 gold apart. So we're paying about the same amount of money for these same items. So, when can I beat 10%? Right? When do I beat 10% more damage? Never? Never? I never beat 10% more damage. But if I have 20 pen, these I'll beat 10% more damage. Right? So Shadow Flame versus Horizon Focus, roughly, if they have less than 100 MR, Shadow Flame, if we always get 20 Magic Pen, that's an if, Shadow Flame's better. Assuming we also, always trigger Horizon Focus. I just want to point out, well done to the game designers, right? Doing some spreadsheet stuff. These numbers line up, right? These numbers line up. Yeah, Shadow Flame is, very clearly, I one-shot you. I one-shot the squishy. I do the damage. I hit them. They die. Horizon Focus is yeah, I'm a little bit scrappier, right? A bit more health, a bit more haste, but, I'm also much more target agnostic, right? It's a flat 10% damage amp. I don't care who I'm hitting. I'm Singed. I don't have a choice. If I can hit Blackline, great. If I have to hit the Ornn, I have to hit the Ornn. This is how it works. Right? Lines up. I think it's really good, right? So well done here. So again, if you didn't catch it, essentially Horizon Focus is better than Shadow Flame against higher MR targets because you're getting more than a 5% damage amp. You're getting less than 10% damage amp for 20 Magic Pen. Against which targets? Shadow Flame's very good. Okay. And now we look at Void Staff. So it gets funky yet again. I guess we go price. Right. So if my target has 30 MR, so we're saying, okay, I have the new Void Staff. I have a 40% Magic Pen amp. And by the way, I'm spending a lot of money on this, by the way, right? We're spending 1,300 gold. Oh, right, because it's in its own sum. We're just going to do that. We're spending this much gold, and by the way, it should be 10% gold efficient, right? So we're really pricing it as, something like that, or... Right, we're really pricing it around 1,500 gold, right? If we're not getting 1,500 gold worth of damage out of Void Staff, we shouldn't be buying Void Staff, right? That's the number we're looking at here, right? We're looking at getting 1,500 gold worth of damage. So, if my target has 30 MR, right, and I have, I have generous AP ratios, we're pogging it, we're doing great. It's well, okay, my 12% damage amp against 30 MR is 35 AP, it's 700 gold, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Okay, they have 45 MR. I get 60% more damage. It's worth 49 AP. It's worth 1,000 gold. It's not worth it. 60 MR, 20% damage amp, 61 AP, 1300 gold, not worth it, right? So you have to have, around 90 AP, 90 MR to get there. And that's just against AP, right? Because we have all these other items that are like better than AP, right? We have the items that are better than AP, right? 90 MR, better than AP, right? 5% damage amp, it's better than ability power. Void Staff, 90 MR, worse than ability power. I guess this is a little fraudulent. But this is with the really generous AP ratios, right? This is with really generous AP ratios, and obviously the farther we go down, we get a 50% damage amp for 285. Yeah, obviously it's outstanding. But let's go to the more real world scenarios. If they have 30 MR, if they have 45 MR, and honestly, right. So this is priced kind of weirdly. I should really just be doing, let's just do 1500 instead of doing this. I think it's actually a more reasonable comparison. And yes, I see you're seeing a very large sea of green here, because yes, indeed, right? Like Magic Pen is a better stat than ability power by a lot, right? Magic Pen is a much better stat than ability power. We go 1500 here as well, because that's what we're actually paying for with this item. And so yes, right. Void Staff in fact beats raw ability power. Void Staff beats Blasting Wands at most price points, but there's a catch here, right? So people buy Luden's Tempest, right? People buy Luden's Tempest. People buy Sork Shoes. And people are going to be buying Shadowflame. Probably, right? Shadowflame's going to give you 20 flat pen. In a lot of cases. And it's going to give you 20 flat pen and 100 AP, right? It's arguably an overall better item. You are paying less money for this damage amp by a lot, right? And so what I kind of surmise here is like, okay, and by the way, this is again why I think items should cost the amount of money, but Void Staff is now only 200 gold less expensive than Cinderbloom, than Shadowflame. So for 200 gold, I can get 35 ability power and a vaguely comparable thing. 200 gold is worth way more than 35 ability power, or 35 AP is worth more than 200 gold, right? And I get some health on top of it, which is just like free, essentially. And all these other things, so it's like, oh, well, okay, what am I actually getting out of Void Staff then, right? Because I can get a 20% damage amp here against a 45 MR target, right? If they have 45 MR and I cut it by half, I, cut 20 magic off of them. But I can already cut 20 magic off them by having a Shadow Flame, right? By just having that item, I can also cut 20 MR off and get the same damage amp for much less money, functionally, right? I'm not paying as much for it. I pay 200 gold for 200 health and 35 AP and a similar amp. So maybe we should go there. And one thing I'm really happy about, actually, which I'm really, really, really happy about, is if the new Abyssal Mask catches on, everyone's base MR is getting lowered by 9 or something, right? 10, 15, whatever the number is, which means a 60 MR target is actually a 45 MR target, right? So that mage with Merc Treads is actually this target, where, this item is actually better. Shadowflame is actually better. Now, I want to point out, again, there's a reason people are buying Void Staff. Void Staff is strictly much better than ability power. Yes, it is, of course, by a lot, right? It's really big. And to be clear a little bit further, as we kind of scroll down to the next thing I've done, right? So this is, again, a little difficult. But this is saying, okay, look, what does 300 ability power cost, right? If we're gonna, let's try to compare apples to apples a little bit. This is gonna be tough, but we're gonna try. That you can do a more thorough analysis here. Okay, if it takes me 300 AP to double my damage, right? To get 100% more damage, it takes 300 AP. That costs me this much money, which means it costs me 6,500 gold to double my damage. That's a really expensive way to double my damage. That's with generous ratios, right? This is unrealistic generous ratios for most champions. Okay, what if we take a more realistic approach? It takes me 550 ability power to double my damage. Okay, well, it takes me 11,000, 12,000 gold to do it. This is the worst number by far. We should absolutely not do this. This is terrible. This is horrible. We should never do this. Okay, what if I buy Horizon Focus? Right? Horizon Focus only costs me like 376 gold, kind of, right? Maybe it should cost a little bit more than this, right? Maybe it's, and then what, like, maybe it's like something like that. Oops. Whatever. Yeah. So, okay. So, if we're going to buy at 100% gold efficiency, it's going to be something around this. If we're going to buy like 110% gold efficiently, it's going to be like 670, but let's just say 100% for now. Again, this would require more thorough analysis, do a better job of this, but like it's a patch rundown. We're just going to kind of talk about this kind of off the cuff. So if you're going to buy at about 100% gold efficient, you are paying 376 for Horizon Focus for a 10% damage amp, which means it's going to cost you, sort of 3,700 gold, right? You're paying 37 gold per 1% damage amp. That's pretty good. If we're getting 10 magic pen on a 30 MR target, they bought some runes, but I have Sork Shoes, they're at 30, and so we're ready to go. I have my 10 flat magic pen. I get 8% more damage out of it. It costs me, 300 gold to do that. It's very similar to Horizon Focus, right? 10 pen against a squishy is very similar to Horizon Focus. 10 pen against a tanky target is bad, right? It's as bad as ability power, right? 10 pen against a tank is not good. 20 pen against squishy is outstanding. It's like the best deal in the game. It's so absurd. It's so good. Absolutely, right? It's bonkers good. And then 20 pen against a tank is not horrible, but it's worse than Horizon Focus, right? We're paying for this and it's not as good. And then we have the Void Staff angle, where, again, a Void Staff against a full squishy, we're getting 12% more damage for a lot of money, right? We're spending 1,300 gold for 12% more damage. There's absolutely no way we want this. This is, like, absolutely not worth it, right? This doesn't scale nearly as well as anything else we could be doing, so we should be spending our money elsewhere. Now, the real way to do all this math is to realistically say, okay, let's plop the item in, right? Let's take the entire price, 3,000 gold, 2,800 gold, whatever. Let's factor in the ability power. Let's factor in how much damage that's doing. Let's factor in all that stuff. Let's go from there. And that's like a more fair comparison. Because, hey, we're spending 3,000 gold on 100 AP and 10%. We're spending 3,000 gold on 60 AP and 12%, right? Like, that's the more fair comparison, to be clear. But it's more advanced than I want to do here, so we're not doing it right now. And then, Void Staff against a really tanky target. Again, we're paying a lot for the passive, and we get all that. So that's what it kind of shows us, is that, Void Staff is probably going to be somewhat less purchased, because we would probably rather go for some of the other items that have more stats on them, that are more efficient, that are going to do better things. As long as we know what targets we're hitting, that's going to feel pretty good. But Void Staff is going to be the best anti-tank item that we have. All right, a couple more changes. We're going to be about 2 hours into the regular one, and then we'll do a TLDR afterwards. Doran's Ring, the focus passive is unchanged. Bonus damage to minions, the base stats are unchanged, all that stuff's the same. But Drain is now different. Instead of killing unit, granting 6 mana and 3 health instead, it's 0.75 mana per second. But if you damage an enemy champion, it increases the amount pretty substantially to 1.25. Over the course of 10 seconds. If you can't, again, 50% conversion. So here's Doran's Ring before and after. It is... Yeah, it should be like here, right? Yeah, here it is. Okay, Doran's Ring before and after. So again, ability power, health, and cost are all the same. Very efficient item. Obviously worth buying. Focus on hit damage, quite good as well. So, before, we would get 6 mana or 3 HP per thing we killed. If we got 12 CS a minute, which is high, we would get 72 mana back per minute. Fair enough. Obviously, if we're getting fewer last hits, right? If we're getting only half of them, we're getting 36 mana per minute. The math's pretty easy. Okay, great. Drain is getting us automatically 45 mana per minute. So if we were getting half CS before and after, Doran's Ring is strictly buffed. Now, hopefully you're getting more than half CS, but like that's the math. You don't have to get a bit more than half CS for it to be a nerf. That said, if you damage an enemy champion every 10 seconds, you are getting 75 mana per minute. Which, by the way, right, is online with perfect CS. So if we are in the old world, we're getting perfect CS. In the new world, we're getting damage on champions every 10 seconds. The regen is identical. We're just kind of changing our behavior slightly, that regen is worth a bit more. Now it's worth noting though that based on the regen here, right, we're getting an extra 0.5 mana per second over 10 seconds. Hitting enemy champion is worth 5 mana. It's not a lot. That's up a little bit, but just by the way. Damaging enemy champion means it's not auto attack, or can be an auto attack, can be a spell, can be anything, but damaging enemy champion is worth 5 mana. It doesn't stack on enemies, it just increases the amount. You did it, good job. It's not like you're going to get 7 mana per second, in a team fight. That's not how that works. Next item is Hextech Alternator. Total cost is unchanged, but instead of Amp Tome, it's Amp Tome Ruby Crystal. As Riot are pushing more and more towards having bruisers be able to buy these items. 150 health is worth 400 gold. 15 AP is worth less than that. This is a strict buff to the item. Hextech Alternator is, I think, downwards. Yes, it is. So a bit more efficient. The Rev passive is still the same. Okay, great. Yeah, really minor thing, but hey, those items all build into some health stuff. Obviously, Ruby Crystal Alternator Blasting Wand is now Amp Hextech Alternator Blasting Wand because it's already got health on the item, but no change to Rocket Belt, no change to Night Harvester, just different look. I do like, though, that... I don't know. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, I guess there's only one Amp Tome. I guess there's two. There's still, right? It's still one Ruby Crystal and still 2 Amp Tomes in the build path. So it's just like the combines are slightly different. But even then, the combined cost is identical. So it doesn't change almost anything about the game. Just, that's the way they build it. Okay, fine. Sure. No problem. And now we have lethality items. So lethality mythics are going down to 3,100. There's a problem that somewhat exists, which is people are going for the fighter mythics over the assassin ones. So we have some buff to assassin mythics. 100 gold cheaper, feels pretty good. Serrated Dirk Warhammer is still Serrated Dirk Warhammer, just 100 gold less on the combine. Okay, great. Bonus AD on the next basic attack against the enemy champion. Deals 10 more damage and 10 more damage for melee, 10 less damage for ranged, same AD ratio for ranged, bigger AD ratio for melee, all else unchanged. So what this means is range is doing 10 less damage, melee is doing 10 more damage with a bigger ratio, and the item is cheaper. So we go back to the top, I think, for the lethality stuff. And where are we going to have our items? Not Yomu's, not Everfrost, Abyssal Mask, Force of Nature, Turbo Chem Tank, Eclipse, Dustblade, Eclipse. Here we go. Okay. So, yep, before and after. Okay, great. Hooray. I forgot to do the math on adding the base item value in there as well. That's my fault. But essentially, what? A quarter of 60 is 15. So 1.5? No, 15. Just outright 15, right? So the base damage was 80, and now it's becoming 93? Something like that. Something like 93, which is pretty substantial, right? That's actually a pretty big deal in terms of increased damage. So a lot more burst now for Dustblade. Yeah, there was a big problem in the fact that Gore Drinker literally did more damage in the active than Dustblade did. That felt pretty troll, so that doesn't happen anymore. Eclipse is cooldown for melee champions down to 6 seconds, all else unchanged. Again, 100 gold cheaper there as well. Prowler's Claw, 100 gold cheaper as well. Bonus damage is the same change as we saw for Duskblade. So, damage goes from 80 to 93, something like that. Feels pretty good. Yomu's Ghostblade is back up to 3,000 gold, which means we can compare Yomu's to before and after, and Yomu's to Axiom Arc. I went the wrong way with it as well. So let's go, 3,000. There we go. So yeah, did Yomu's get nerfed? Of course it did. Wait, why am I... There we go. Yeah, it got nerfed. Okay. And yeah, comparing it to Axiom Arc, it's actually the same price. Haha, you were trolled earlier on. But yeah, 8 lethality versus 10 haste. And then the change in passives. Okay, great. And again, this is why I like items having the same price, because it makes them easier to compare across one another. Cool beans. Yeah. Cool stuff. Okay, new rune, First Strike, now exists. It's a new inspiration keystone that gives you huge damage and gold boost when you strike an enemy champion first, but I think if they hit you first. Great for artillery champions and assassins during playtests. We're excited to see you experiment with it. You can do more deals behind this design here. Basic attacks and abilities against the enemy champion within 0.25 seconds of entering champion combat. So worth pointing out, by the way, that even if you are untouched, like let's say you're playing Kog'Maw or Azir or whatever, you deal your damage. You then get a new target. You do not first strike that target because you're already in champion combat. So it is only against the first person. It's very much like press the attack. You're getting it, on one target per fight, unless you magically hit 4 people at once and you can hit all of them. That's kind of unlikely. So I think a lot of the extreme cases of how much gold it's going to earn is very, very overwrought because you're going to hit a Maokai. You're going to, hit him as much as you can. Ow, whatever. He disengages and you get nothing else for anyone else, right? Like that's how that's going to work. But you hit the champion, you gain 5 gold, and for the next 3 seconds, you do 10% bonus damage. Oh, no, okay, I realized I'm inting it. For 3 seconds, causing you to deal 10% bonus damage against champions. Okay, it's not against your target. I should have kept reading. That's my fault. So you hit the Maokai first. You're going to have 3 seconds to do all the damage you possibly can, getting 100% of your bonus damage as gold, or if your range 70% of your bonus damage as gold. And the cooldown's quite long, right? Even at level 18 is 15 seconds. So you can unload the first 3 seconds, but if it's a long form fight, you're not getting anything. So press the attack is way better for long form fighting. Lethal Tempo is way better for long form fighting. Conquer is way better for long form fighting. What's interesting is comparing this to Electrocute is interesting because, right, you're going to get that burst over 3 seconds, and Electrocute does a lot of damage. And if they strike you first, you get the full cooldown. But it won't reset the cooldown because that's not how the ability works. Okay, great. So what this means is you need to get as much damage in 3 seconds as Electrocute would deal in its trade as well. Is that going to happen? Don't know. Also, are they going to hit you first? Maybe. There's a really good chance this rune actually sucks. People are like, oh my god, it's going to be so broken, it's so OP. And it's like, well, maybe. We'll see how it goes. Like, it really could be very good. Like, printing money in a landing phase is a very good thing. If you're not pushing them out of landing Electrocute anyway, then it's good. But like, a lot of times this is going to do stuff. Like press the attack literally does more damage than first strike in situations where you're auto-attacking. It's just more damage. It's strictly more damage. But you might like first strike and getting the gold and all that. Getting 70% of your 300 damage combo, which does 10% more damage. So 70% of 30, 21, we get 25 damage for the trade. Okay, but they press the attack to me. Am I down a health potion? Because health potions cost 50 gold. Right? Like, if the difference in trading pattern is 75 health or more, press the attack and health potions are better than first strike. Right? Like, that's how that math works out. So we'll have to see, right? Omnistone is gone. Goodbye, Omnistone. Glacial Augment is now no more basic attacks slow, no more active items slow. It's now immobilizing an enemy champion that causes the Glacial Rays to come out. So, Malphite ult, Maokai W, Pike Lance's Q, whatever else, will cause Glacial Rays to emanate from them towards me and nearby champions. So, right? We get this, cool peace sign coming out. Frozen Lines that slow pretty heavily. It scales off heal and shield power, which is interesting. So that means, Janna landing a tornado, that's going to hit you. Janna ulting is going to do it. Straka, I guess if the root lands, that feels pretty fraudulent. But Tarek could maybe do a little bit, and you can get something going on there. Rakan could do it with his W and his R. Seems reasonable there as well. But 35% slow is pretty reasonable. And also they do 50% less damage against your allies, but not you. So that's actually pretty interesting. So if Janna lands Tornado, you can still, your trade against Kalista now feels really bad. It's kind of interesting. And the lines last 3 seconds after the duration of the CC. So pretty cool stuff. I'm glad to see it's updated. Definitely like the active item stuff was kind of weird. I'm a huge fan of these updates. I did like Omnistone, but obviously no one used it, so okay, it's gone. New rune Lethal Tempo rework. So instead of like waiting 1.5 seconds and getting a big burst of attack speed, you gain up to 90 or 30% attack speed for melee and ranged champions. Now, I'm not sure if 30% attack speed is enough for ranged champions. It might be. Obviously, it's meant to be good for a long form fight. Also, it increases your attack range, which is a pretty big deal. So there's a really good chance that, like, we get my 6 autos off as Jinx, and now I have like 850 range, and now I'm really absurd. Like that, that's actually pretty cool. You have to hit an enemy champion at least once every 6 seconds to keep it. So, keep that in mind. But yeah, it's gonna stack up. It's gonna stay on for the entire team fight. This could be really, really, really good. I'm not sure. Could be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. If it needs to be buffed for melee champions or range champions or whatever, it's going to have to happen. Keep in mind, melee champions in general have a harder time landing chain auto attacks. It's got to compete with Conqueror as well for them. Of course, they're getting 2 Conqueror stacks per auto attack, so they got to still land 6 autos to get all the way up here. But maybe it's good. We'll see. It's only striking with auto attacks, by the way, so you can't, like, Jax Q doesn't give a stack, Jax R doesn't give a stack. Aurelia Q may or may not count as an auto attack. I don't know. Right? It applies on hit effects. It applies Sheen, Does Aurelia Q count? I don't know. But her W, R, and E aren't going to stack it. So, we'll see how that goes, right? It may be hard to stack, and it's like, yeah, it's aspirational that you get a lot. I don't know. And Ultimate Spellbook exists. Okay, so, 2 hours in. Preseason 2022, TLDR. Let's get into it. Okay, objective bounties exist. Pretty good amount of money on this, for sure. This is going to feel good. I think it's going to really force winning teams to make sure they're snapping up the dragons. And it means the losing team can definitely try to cross-map to get some value. That could be kind of interesting. Jungle changes. Oh, it's not here yet. Okay. Chemtech Drake now exists. Bonus damage when your opponent has more current health than you. You don't have to necessarily be low. You can just be full health Ashe hitting a tank, and you get some damage that way. Chemtech Soul gives everyone a Scion passive. Basically, gas zones will exist around Red Buff and Wolf Camp that camouflage anyone in it. It's basically brush that can't be revealed by regular wards. And beyond that, you also then get the benefit of 2 extra Cloud Drakes while in the gas zone. Kind of interesting stuff. Hextech Drake is very build efficient in terms of ability haste and attack speed. If you're a champion who uses both stats, like say Jax or Aurelia, you're gonna really, 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 really like this. It's the best Drake by far for those kind of champions. That I think is okay. The damage it deals is definitely less than Infernal Dragon. But the slow is obviously pretty nice. Don't worry about the scaling. It's actually pretty mediocre, all things considered. So, 45-35% slow for the most part is what it's going to be. Chain lightning slow to 4 targets should be pretty good. Hex gates are going to be really interesting. So out of your base into the jungle, and across Baron Pit, across Dragon Pit, out of the base into the jungle. This is going to be pretty wild. I'm looking forward to this a lot. I think this is like the most exciting thing from the Drakes in the new patch. Cloud Drake is now out of combat move speed and some slow resistance. Okay, great. Rift Scuttler, the first one, is worth a lot less XP. Everything else is the same. New items. There is now a AP Mythic tier at 2,800. This new item, Crown of the Shattered Queen, which gives you the same stats as an Everfrost, and a Malzahar passive is what it does. It's a Malzahar passive. It doesn't block CC, but it blocks damage for 75%, as well as some bonus AP while the shield holds, and a little bit after it breaks. Everfrost is coming down to this price point as well. They have the same total cost. They have the same total price point. Everfrost gives you a CC. This gives you some durability. I'm a huge fan of Riot adding some, I'm not doing well, let me just be useful in some way, which is either not getting one shot or providing crowd control. Huge fan. Think it's great design. A new Locket side grade, right? Instead of going Locket, you can go Even Shroud. Same build path though. Health, ability haste, armor, MR, all the same stuff. But it's the Abyssal Mask passive. The old Abyssal Mask passive, after immobilizing champions, cause that guy and everyone near them to be 12% more damage taken, which looks pretty good. It should be quite strong. Looking forward to that one. It is Mythic Abyssal Mask, which is cool. Axiom Arc now exists. It is very similar in price point and build path to Yomu's Ghostblade. Essentially, Yomu's is going to give you the extra move speed. It's going to give you more lethality. Axiom Arc is going to give you a more ability haste and the ultimate cooldown refund. 1/4 of your ultimate's cooldown when you get when you get a kill within 3 seconds of damaging them, or an assist within 3 seconds of damaging them. Looks pretty interesting. Shadow Flame is a new item. 100 AP, 200 health, 10 to 20 magic pen, mostly erring towards the side of 20. This is a very big deal. This is going to be a very frequent second item purchase for assassins. This looks quite nice. And again, the earlier you buy it, the more pen it's going to give, because if they only have 1,000 health, you're getting the full 200 magic pen. 2,500 health is really unrealistic for almost any squishy champion, which means you're always getting more than 10 flat magic pen. This item is really good. Witch's Approach and Fimbulwinter is a tier that builds for tanks. It's flat health, it's flat mana, it's flat ability haste. You gain health equal to mana. Essentially, this item has less health than... it's a very similar price point, similar haste, similar health, but less health than Anathema's Chains. And essentially, if it's one carry you're worried about, Anathema's Chains is still better. If you're trying to tank from a lot of people, Fimbulwinter will give you overall more durability than Anathema's. Tank items getting an update. Balmy Cinder will now execute minions for you if there's 1 tick to go. Frostfire Gauntlet has some upfront damage up top by auto-attacking and doing the slow field. The upfront slow field now deals damage. Turbo Chem Tank now has kind of a static shiv effect where you build up charges and then you AoE for a lot of damage. This is actually entirely replacing the Immolate, unlike Frostfire where it's on top of. Depending on how fast this charges up, this could be a buff or a nerf. It's hard to say. Sunfire Aegis just gets a little bit more powerful with plus 5 armor MR and 50 health in the Mythic passive. Abyssal Mask is getting slightly reshaped. More health, now has haste, less MR, but it curses nearby enemy champions, reducing their MR by at least 9.5. Realistically, more like 15. Up for a max at 20 if you're really, really high build. 1500 bonus health is a lot. For each cursed enemy gains 7 MR, which means the baseline item has 37 MR, 50 health, which is overall a buff to the item, as long as you're okay being a bit less baseline MR. But basically is a whole lot of flat magic pen. It could be good for you. It could be a decent singed item. It could also mean that your allied teammates are less likely to buy Void Staff because the base MR of the enemy champions is going down, and there's really no reason to buy Void Staff against Ashe against an Abyssal Mask. Force of Nature is now much more the I want to tank magic damage item. MR is up, move speed unchanged. Essentially, what it comes down to, instead of getting MR and move speed as you gain stacks, you gain it all at the very end. It is more durability and similar enough move speed, but it's overall more durability. So Force of Nature is much more of a tank item, and still the move fast one for the MR. Knight's Vow loses some health regen. Basically, it's a better version of the passive. You're overall going to redirect a similar amount of damage from your teammate, but you're going to regen yourself. It's going to be a decent item. Aegis is a little bit cheaper. Stoneplate a bit cheaper. Locket same price. Everfrost, as I said, going down to 2800 gold. Overless is a very, very big buff to the item. Losing 10 AP and 5 of the mythic passive for 400 gold is outstanding. It is a buff for virtually all portions of the game and should feel outstanding. Demonic Embrace is moving more towards being a damage item for bruisers. So the AP by itself is down by exactly 1 because the bonus health feeds into the bonus health as ability power. And instead of 70, it's 69. Nice. It's 10. It's 100 more health. However, you are losing the armor MR, which was 10 to 20 based on targets. So it is overall, I would say, less tanky for frontliners, but more damage for them because the burn is now 2% for melee, which makes this an auto include for Singed, but he's going to be ever so slightly less powerful. But it's a really good combo with the new Abyssal Mask because bonus health turns into flat magic pen, and bonus health turns into ability power, and you burn for their max health, and it all feels pretty good. Archangel Staff and Seraph's Embrace is losing quite a bit of ability power to the tune of around 60, but gaining 250 health, and gaining a bunch of ability haste to the tune of around 20. So 20 ability haste and 250 health as the price of about 60 ability power. This is a reasonable trait, as well as you're going to do this Imperium passive, which is now restoring health equal to mana spent, which is going to be even more health. So Seraph's Embrace is no longer an AP stat stick, which I'll be honest, I wasn't that good at. Horizon Focus was a better, basically Horizon Focus was a better Seraph's Embrace. And the new Magic Pen item was also a better Seraph's Embrace. Or is going to be a new better than Seraph's Embrace. So cool to see it change around to a bit more bruisery. I think it's pretty reasonable. Next up is Cosmic Drive, getting reshaped very slightly. A bit less AP, more health, a bit less ability haste because of the old passive. Very, very similar move speed. So basically it's less haste, a bit less AP, more health, and a bunch of move speed and AP in combat. So pretty much a strict buff. Horizon Focus loses 30 ability power, but now Hypershot works on slowed champions, as well as some health and haste. Basically, Horizon Focus and Demonic Embrace, the new AP health flat pen item, these are going to be direct competitors, same price point, very similar stat profile. Essentially, Horizon Focus is better against targets with 100 MR or higher, and the flat pen item is better against champions with less than 100 MR. This is the rough way the math works out. Void Staff is now a little bit more expensive, but more pen, but less AP. It's supposed to add a very close price point to these items. I would have liked to see 3K. I think that would have been the most fair. I really, really think Void Staff should be 3K. But essentially, it's actually a pretty close comparison, especially if you have a teammate running an Abyssal Mask, lower people's MR. It's going to hurt Void Staff a little bit here. And you should have a real choice here because buying the new flat pen item should do a lot to kind of eat Void Staff's lunch as a second item choice. Horizon Focus is very good as well. So some real thoughts here. Doran's Ring, pretty flat, all things considered. The amount of passive regen is the same as if you were going to last at about like 6 minions per minute. If you are perma-harassing and getting this trigger every 10 seconds, it's the same as perfect CS, basically. But essentially, it's not much different. Don't worry about it. It's not very different. It just means you have to harass to get your little bit more mana regen. It's not a big deal. Hextech Alternator now has health instead of AP, or at least a little bit less AP. Not a big deal. Rocket Belt Harvester unchanged. Duskblade and Eclipse and Prowler's Claw are all 100 gold cheaper. The proc damage is a bit higher for Duskblade and Prowler's Claw, but the range Duskblade damage is down very slightly. Shouldn't be a big deal. Melee champion cooldown for Eclipse is down very slightly, so buffs to melee lethality users. Ghostblade now at 3k gold is going to be the same price as the new Axiom Arc. First Strike now exists. If you deal damage first, you deal 10% bonus damage for 3 seconds and gain bonus gold as a result. If the enemy strikes you first, it goes on cooldown. So high risk, pretty high reward. Omnistone is gone. Glacial Augment no longer has an active item interaction, no longer has an auto attack interaction. Instead, it is a mobilizing enemy champions, puts out Glacial Rays, and those Glacial Rays slow as expected, but they also make enemies deal less damage against your allies, but not you. So pretty interesting stuff here. Lethal Tempo now stacks like Conqueror, but only for auto attacks. It takes 6 stacks. It gives a lot of attack speed for melee, not quite as much for range, to be fair. Melee auto attacking 6 times is a lot more hard, a lot more difficult than Ashe auto attacking 6 times, but melee champions gain 50 range. Range champions get 100 range, but less overall attack speed, only 30%. Pretty interesting stuff. Should be pretty cool to look at. And that's it. That's the TLDR. That's the patch rundown. It's a spicy preseason. It's going to be a lot of fun. See you soon. Bye.